This is Hannibal here from thehannibaltv.com. A big interview today, one of the biggest promoters in the history of Ireland, for whatever that's worth, Simon Rochford, or Rockford. Sorry, I'm an idiot as far as pronouncing your name. Rockford, from
Rochford.
Irish Whip,
Yeah.
Rochford, yeah, from Irish Whip Wrestling. And he's had dealings with TNA. He's had dealings with Sheamus, Drew McIntyre, lots of people that we're going to talk about today. You can ignore my pronunciation issues. I'll blame it on the concussions. How are you doing today, sir?
Great to tell you the truth. I am enjoying a nice summer's day in Ireland, so it's very unusual for us to get nice hot weather. So I was out enjoying that today. Besides the good weather, it's things are good. Yeah, things are good. Thanks for asking.
What
How's all with
what's
you as
the
well?
well, we're just starting to get a bit warmer here. It's been pretty cold. How hot does it get over there in Ireland? Because you always see in the movies it's a very dark, rainy
Gloomy,
type
grey.
place.
Yeah.
Is that true?
So yeah, most of the time, depending where you are. But if you get nice weather, I think the hottest it'd get here would be 20 plus degrees. When you get weather like that, you'd be outside all day. It's brilliant. But yeah, it can be very gloomy all year round and raining and dark. So it's unlike in Canada where you see lots of snow. Even though it's cold, it looks romantic and almost fresh and warm. You know, we don't get that here at all. We get a little bit of snow, but yeah, it can be gloomy here a lot of the time. So that's Ireland. Kind of like in
Well,
Japan.
this
You ever in Japan? Some parts of Japan are like that.
When were you in Japan?
I was in Japan. I visited about 2 years ago, just before COVID. It was nice over there. Very busy city, but yeah, I enjoyed Japan. I'd like to go back again, and I've been to New Zealand. I'd like to go there actually.
So, as far as your background, were you growing up a wrestling fan? Did WWE come there when you were growing up?
When I was growing up, I came across the world of sport. That was with the old British wrestlers, Big Daddy and Giant Haystacks, as they say. But I absolutely fell in love with that as a kid. I can remember when I was around six, it was my sixth birthday, and I have a memory of that. And I just loved wrestling from then. Every Saturday, if I can, I'd sit in front of the telly and I'd catch that. And then obviously, we got satellite and cable over here. So that's how we got the WWE at the time in screen sport. And that American wrestling just blew me away. How like it was like a show, the colors, theatrics, the whole lot. And I fell more in love with wrestling then. As I think it was 12 when WWF came here, and we had screen sport. You had Stampede Wrestling. I loved Stampede Wrestling, but we were spoiled with all the wrestling that we had here. And then eventually the WWF took over the spot on ITV, World of Sport, and then eventually World of Sport went. But I have very fond memories of wrestling when I was young, and there was nothing in Ireland, um, wrestling wise to me as a kid. So I started to tape trade when I got old. Was the first tape trader in Ireland. I wrote for e-zines or fanzines like they were back in the day. So anything I could do to try and be involved. And obviously you progress then as you get older, or more wiser. But Oric Williams, a Welsh promoter, so he would run tours of Ireland. But back in the day, for your social media and so forth, he would run certain spots of the country, and you wouldn't even know he was there unless you lived in the region. You wouldn't have a clue, like you know. But I got to see one of his shows then years later, around '92, in the National Stadium. That had like Dave Finlay, had Rasputin, Franz Schumann. The American one was the Equalizer. Do you remember him? He was Kevin Sullivan's twin brother or something like that.
Yeah,
He
Dave
was on it.
Sullivan, and I've interviewed him actually. He seems like a nice guy.
So at that show, I went up to the promoter and it was all nice. You read in the magazines, you tell you, offer to help anything sweeping the floor. I did all that trying to get involved, but obviously the promoter didn't want me there, understandably so. But yeah, that was my first experiences with wrestling, and I enjoyed it, telling you the truth.
For Oric Williams, I remember Mason Ryan back when he was wrestling for All Star when I was there. I think he was like Oric Williams' prize wrestler at that time. And I wasn't even aware there was wrestling over there in Wales. What could you tell me about Wales wrestling? Because I'm sure most of the fans know nothing about it either.
See, with wrestling over in England, Britain was completely different to what it was in Ireland. Even in Northern Ireland, wrestling was completely different to Republic of Ireland. So in Wales, in particular, Arctic was the top dog there. He was known as an outlaw, as the Yanks call it, promoter back in the day. He was, I don't know if I'd use the word illegally, but he was running against like joint promotions and so forth. And that's how Brian Dixon started. But Arctic was a very, very, very successful wrestler and an even more successful promoter. So he was in Royal, I think you pronounce it, I'm almost positive it's North Wales. So he started off there and then he just promoted everywhere, all over UK and Ireland. Very successful promoter. And if you watch any of the stuff on YouTube back in the day when you had Big Van Vader, he was full powered. I think it was over in Germany, Austria, Otto Vons. You'll see Arctic on Eurosport stuff in the corner of all the big Yanks when you had Tugboat. He used to wrestle as Big Steel Man. But you'd always see Arctic in the corner as the heel manager. So yeah, Arctic was a cornerstone of wrestling in Europe, actually, let alone Wales.
Yeah, because they had him, and then there was the Germany guy, Otto Wants for Vance or something like that as well. And there's not
Yeah.
much going on in Germany now, is there, as far as
Germany, no. So back
non-WWEs?
in the day, Germany and Austria, particularly Germany, was like England. You had so many promotions, actual professional wrestlers. People go there for the tours, different promoters. It was on fire. But it was a different style of wrestling and a different format of promoting. They would stay, say, 6 weeks in the one place. I worked in Vienna, Austria for, there about 6 months. Otto Vons came and he had a partner, Peter Williams. So Otto Vons was Austrian, Peter Williams was German, I think. And I used to love that. It was 6 nights a week for all that time. And you had Fifth Finley, you had Robbie Brookside, Tony St. Clair, Cannibal Grizzly was PNU's, Frank Schumann, Icky Eckenstein. You had all these guys that would come in, and I was brilliant. It was a round system. So he would do 6 weeks all around the place, but then obviously things went down for him. Ulrich stopped running, and then you had a lot of independent promotions come in, and it just went downhill. I know you had various pop-ups here and there, and you still have a lot of independents there. You had WXW in Germany. They were a very small independent like yourself, starting out, and you grew as time went along. And they became very successful. So they're probably the most successful promotion in Germany now. And that is where Gunther, Gunther is pronounced name. He started out as Big Van Walter. And oh my God, back in the day, he looked terrible. He had like a pink, purple kind of onesie. And I remember the guy trying to get me to book him was like, no, I don't want them. But what Gunther did, unlike many people in Germany, Ireland, England, he progressed as time went on. He became a superb wrestler, an athlete, changed his look. He became one of the key people on the European scene. So he kept working at his look, his in-ring quality, and his reputation. So he went from starting out weak like everybody else to just being top tier. Like he's one of the future stars, obviously, in the WWE. So I think people should look at the likes of him back in the day to what he became and work off that, as opposed to staying the same way you were 10 years ago, not changing and expecting way things don't change for them. But Gunther's a very good example of that.
I remember when he had that match with PCO at a WrestleMania weekend a few years ago. That was kind of revamped PCO's career, and it made Gunther get noticed by WWE. He was still
Yeah,
flabby then, so he's even reinvented himself since then and
yeah.
completely leaned out.
And he carries himself from what you see in interviews and social media and WWE very professionally, which is a huge, big thing. Just to go to PCO, PCO reinvented himself as well, but that kind of the monster gimmick. That was a great character he came up with himself. Like, I was actually surprised he never made it to, not that they didn't make it, but the AEW, WWE present day, or going back a few years ago, because he really put the effort into changing his character. Like, and you could believe him as a monster. Like, I thought it was a great gimmick he came up with, on top of being an excellent tough guy and wrestler. Like, I had him here for the
You
tour. I thought PCO was the top shelf guy. Like, he's tough, but he doesn't act tough. Like most good tough guys. Like.
Yeah, he is tough, not only in the ring, but I mean, he was a bouncer for that whole time between WWE and his current run. And in Montreal, you're dealing with problems. But I think for WWE, they still Shawn Michaels has always had a good position there. I think that type of heat is what prevented him from going back there. AEW, from what I understand, he had an opportunity to join when it first opened, but he didn't want to wait, so he went to Ring of Honor, which
That
he
was a
probably
mistake,
should
I
have
think.
waited.
Yeah. So he's probably missed the boat on that, but still, he'd make a good coach or a good producer,
Oh
like, you know.
yeah.
So he has
Well,
the
and all of
opportunity there.
these, yeah, and they have a lot of real nobodies in their ROH version, and a lot of like smaller wrestlers that kind of all blend together. I still think he could be something in AEW, but I'm not the booker.
As a wrestler, like,
Yeah, maybe like one run, maybe one last run as a wrestler there while he can still move around decent.
he could, but the history of AEW, the big guys that go in, like your Moiro and so forth, they haven't exactly been used as the way they should have. It's like a flip on the old school wrestling where you had the big guys and the small guys, but now it's the opposite way around. The small guys beat up the big guys quite easily, and it's kind of reversal of the story. So, unfortunately, you wouldn't know what way his run would go there if he was to have one, like, you know.
Yeah, my only thing I feel bad for him on is he takes all these crazy bumps in TNA, and there's so few people that watch TNA these days if you follow it, like what they actually do for ratings and stuff. So I hope he doesn't end up with serious health problems as he gets older, due to all these insane bumps that he's taken.
Well, at the age he's at now, I suppose he probably won't notice for a few more years when it starts coming through. Like, so he probably has those injuries, but you just haven't broke through on the surface yet. Unfortunately, when he was here, I thought it was great. I hadn't had the best working relationships with French Canadians. Canadians brilliant. I've had a ton of Canadians in Irish Whip over the years, but French Canadians can be a bit more work with them. But PCO was great. I know one or two promoters in England who'd used him said he was hard work or he's whatever. But he came in here, we agreed to payday. I asked him what he asked him to do, which is put my own guys over and make them look good. That's exactly what he did, and you can't fault that. If he was back around, they're still running, I'd use him in a heartbeat, like, you know.
As far as the other French Canadians, anyone we know?
Yes. Let me see. Where do we start? French Canadians. I remember one time with Seamus, there was a guy on holidays in Ireland called the Green Phantom, and he was with a group in Montreal. I'm almost sure it was IWS, and he wore a mask and camouflage gear. So he's in Ireland, and I booked him for 2 or 3 shows. He came in, he worked with Seamus. Now, big guy, but just, I didn't like his attitude. Like, he was there with his pal. I used his pal as the MC. Yeah, just, he was hard. And he used to stay for 3 shows, and he left. I put him up in my house that night, and he left. The next morning, he was gone, little handwritten note. Oh, we've decided to go elsewhere in Ireland with the Cliffs of Moher or wherever it was. And on the computer screen, they'd watch porn, and I was just like, is that a rib? Like, I did fucking dickhead, like, you know? That was a bad experience, you know? Then I had the likes of Rennie Dupree. And Rennie Dupree came in, looks fantastic. Had problems with him at first. Just, to me, what's to most people, a typical French Canadian way, very laid back and do whatever, like, and it's around the hard work at first, but once we got around it, he was grand. Like, I asked him I think it was 15 minutes in a match. I had 2 shots in the one day in the one building, and he came in and he's very going around the place, and he had like 8 minutes or something like that. And I remember saying to him, how about I give you that same percentage of your wages as opposed to your full wage? You know, I'm sure he thought it was an asshole and whatnot. But then that changed. And as a rib, I would book him in half-hour matches on stuff that wasn't taped. And in fairness to him, he'd go and do them, you know, but I have to actually stop doing that in the end because I thought it was ripping him, but in fact, he was kind of trying to rip around to me. But on one of your, I listened to one of your recent broadcasts there on your channel, and you had said you knew Rene around that time when he was in England and he was going through a depression. That made sense listening to that, like.
Yeah, he was. I will say that I knew him back then, obviously, and now, and he was definitely. I mean, he had just been released from WWE, and he, like all of us, go through issues from time to time. I think he was going through some issues in those days.
Now, at the same time, when he was here, there was a sponsor. I think it was, you'd called him a sponsor of his from America. I think they sponsored his flights and stuff like that. So he would ask me to get pictures of Rene and give him raw footage of Rene when he's wrestling. Yeah, this guy he was a pain. He just constantly asked me for requests. Now, the guy wasn't paying me, and obviously he was Rene's sponsor. And I would say to Rene, looking for the video of you doing the French tickler. And I think Rene thought it was me looking for the parsley, the little dance. I said, I'm not doing that. I said, well, I don't want it. I said, this guy, Rod was his name. I said, Rod wants it. He's the one saying, and I don't mind that guy. But I'm sure he probably had a lot of stress with that guy. Probably wanted this and that album. Your man Rod actually.
He likes doing that. I don't think he likes doing the French tickler on the Independents for some reason, because I think I've asked him to do it a couple times, but I don't think he's ever done it in Great North Wrestling.
But with this particular guy, he wanted a video, me to shoot a video of Rene doing this, say, backstage or whatever, and send it on to him. Now, him and Rene had a relationship, financial or whatever. So he was probably pissed off with this guy doing it. And I was pissed off the guy asking me to keep doing it. But the guy actually bought raw footage of me of Rene's matches. And he paid well, like, for just the matches in the house show. So at the end of the day, if you're making cash, and you have a conscience, obviously. But yeah, so I'm sure he was stressed out with a lot of stuff beyond what was happening in Irish Whip, like, But he looked good. He looked good, and he put all my guys over, like,
And I can't blame him for being cranky if he was working for Brian Dixon for like a large period of time by then.
To be honest with Brian Dixon, I've had me ups and downs with Brian, and God bless him, he's passed away. But he did give a lot of people work. There was people I know that they have their own issues with him and so forth. And I would have had guys here to go over and guys that were there that he didn't allow over here. But I've heard some of the stories. I know Vito, Big Vito, when he was there, he didn't he like similar to you stories he didn't like. But at the end of the day, I got on with Brian. I sent a guy over there. He told me he was Canadian, Air Force trainer in school, a guy called Blake. And man, this guy said he trained with the Hearts and Stampede. I don't know if it was around the time you were there. I took this guy in around 2004, I think it was, thinking he was Canadian, trained by the Hearts, and he said he had hundreds of matches. And this is before really, your social media, you can find out things online. I came in as a trainer. I was like, this guy, he's not a wrestler, And he made all these mistakes, and he didn't know his arse from his elbow, as the saying goes. And I sent him on a tour with Dixon. Brian Dixon ran me up, giving out shit about him, going, this guy can't this and that. Use him as a ref on it. Like, so I called around. I won't mention the Canadian wrestlers, but a lot of guys around Stampede at the time, they asked me not to give his name or their name to him because he used to write for, it was a WOW magazine back in the day. And yeah, so they basically told me it was like, I had a very well-known American journalist wrestling back in the day. So I confronted him. Some of the Stampede wrestlers that I'd asked about told me what he was like, and he literally had one match, I think it was. I confronted him on it, and he admitted to it. So not long after that, then he was replaced. But yeah, it was just bad timing bringing him in. But yeah, the guy I did send over to Brian Dixon first was awful. So he probably thought the whole of Irish Whip was awful based on this one guy, like, But you learn as you go along.
I recall actually before the internet became bigger, a lot of people claimed to be from Stampede and trained by the Hearts, even applying for Great North Wrestling, not knowing that I actually was there around the times they were claiming they were there. It used to be a thing that people did all the time for some reason.
100%. But at the same time, I've had people over the years say they were trained by the Wild Samoans. Now, technically, they were there in Pennsylvania, in Dory Funk Jr., Lance Storm. Now, I'm sure they were there, but they weren't properly trained by them. And that's not saying anything about those guys as trainers. They turned out some talent. But they'd come back here and you could barely run the ropes. So obviously they just turned up there and went through the motions of a class. But that doesn't mean they're Lance Storm trained. So I mean, I had about 3 come in. There's only one of them that was decent from Lance Storm, say, or WXW was a promotion in Pennsylvania. So yeah, you have guys come along just dropping names thinking, there you go, you were trained there until you actually see them. But all that does is bring down the name value of the person who trained them, not the quality of the training.
So as far as starting your own company, how did you get into professional wrestling, and how did that evolve into opening Irish Whip Wrestling?
So I was going to start off as a magazine called Irish Whip. We had a very popular magazine at the time called Power Slam Wrestling. It was an English magazine, which I liked. And there was a few other of the independent ones you get. You'd only get them in certain stores. Back in the day, they used to cover things like the TWA, Early Day, DCW, and that. So I wanted to get one of these magazines to cover European wrestling more. But the cost, the admin cost, the printing with the publishers, the legal side of it, I was like, oh, here, this is absolutely crazy. And then I said, I might try and promote some shows and see how that goes. So I started Irish Whip. Around 2001, I started putting stuff together. I announced the 4 shows in January 2001 and then ran 4 shows in June. But there's no Irish wrestlers. There was no training skill. There was nothing in Ireland Irish-wise. So I had to use all international guys, actually, on the 4 shows I ran. Now, that was costly. I remember they had a guy called Scott Conway. I don't know if you heard of Scott while you were on your tours in England. He would have been a competitor for Brian Dixon in England. But he helped me out. I brought in guys like Brookside, Flatliner, Joe Legend, PNUs, Tatanka, Doug Williams, Mike Modest. Very expensive cards, very expensive. So it's funny, if I knew back then what I know now, it would have ran completely different. But, you know, you learn from your mistakes.
Yeah, you and me both, as far as the learning experiences. You've worked with so many famous wrestlers. Who are some of the better ones that you've enjoyed working with, and who are some of the ones that weren't so great to work with?
Right. So I base somebody when they come in is that they'll do what I'll ask, which is, can you put my local guys over? Can you take his finisher? Can you make them look good? Can you make the fans leave, go home happy? That's all. I couldn't care what their attitude is beyond doing that. But as long as they do that, I'm happy with it. If they don't, well, then it's an issue. I won't bring them back. Or I've had some guys I've actually threatened to send them home during the tour. Balls Mahoney was one, threatened to send him home. He was being an arsehole. But when I threatened them, I was prepared. I put him in the taxi and send them back. Then completely different. I saw the real Balls, and the real Balls was a lovable character. He was crazy, like, but yeah. Kid Cash, there's one time I had to have a chat with him, roughing up lads. But after that chat, I mean, he was grand. He put me guys over, but he's, I don't know if you had dealings with Kid Cash. He's a genuine tough guy, like, he really is.
Well, I don't think have you ever seen his MMA fight? He lasted about
No,
35 seconds. Look it up.
I must check. And in
But I
fairness,
think
though,
he was past his prime by then. He must have been past his prime by then.
I suppose there's not really a good history of pro wrestlers going into MMA, though, really, is there?
No, not really. Other than Lashley and Lesnar, to a lesser extent, Jake Hager.
Yeah, but
They did okay.
but they were those kind of athletes before an
Yeah.
amateur, before they became wrestlers. So and Brock Lesnar the same. Like, they were those amateur wrestlers before they came in. That's something I actually miss. Back in the day, we remember Wales and the English wrestling, European wrestling, guys who were amateur wrestlers, established amateur wrestlers. That's how they got into wrestling, who had a fighting background. Tough guys that came in that way. Whereas now, obviously, that's all changed. I still like amateur wrestling. I go to some of the open contests here in Ireland that they'll be on. Amateur wrestling at its core, it's an excellent sport, like, just the wrestling seems to be gone over professional wrestling these days, like, so that's a shame. Who would I say? Actually, Jake the Snake. Here's one with Jake the Snake. Jake has turned his life around. You listen to these podcasts and stuff he does. Brilliant. Back in the day, not the case. He lived in England. He was probably, I'm not sure if he was still there when you would have been gone, I think, when you were in around England. So he came in first. I think Andre Baker, who had Harmalock, I think he brought him in first and paid for his visa. And then with Scott Conway and Brian Dixon, we worked for all these guys. That time, he was still, had these demons, as they say, alcohol and so forth. And he had a reputation of no-showing events, taking the deposit, no-showing. So I used Scott Conway on my shows in 2002 when I started going forward as a guy who would make sure Jake came along. And Jake had a habit of taking 2 bookings on the one day. Anyway, he turned up at the airport. I went with the driver to collect him, make sure everything was okay. Came out carrying a bottle of scotch, half drunk. He was fucking half drank, but he was drunk or locked, as we say. And I was like, oh, Jesus Christ. And he got to the hotel. He was demanding this certain pizza. So I said to the guy, look, everybody else is going. You stay with him, look after him. We got back to the hotel that night and pizza was still there, everything he wanted, like, and he was what he was at the end of the night. I paid him his Polaroid money, didn't even check it. Anyway, backtrack a little bit. So he's on the show. I see the state he's in. And I was like, I can't put him in the main event. So I said I'd put him on prior to intermission. That way I can get him out of the building. He's gone. He had the snake. The guy who owned the snake, obviously, it's his snake, like, you know, he didn't want any harm coming to it. And he gave strict instructions. Don't be tapping on the head. Don't do this. Don't do that. Jake, acting the bollocks drunk. Nobody tells me what to do. He goes out to have his match. Intoxicated, drunk. We had Flatliner. There's a guy in England back in the day called Flatliner. He was like a cheap version of the Road Warrior. Do you know Flatliner?
I know him. He's a nice guy, yeah.
Yeah, and he's hilarious as well. Like, if you're around him, he's a really funny guy. So he went out and he's stomping out to the ring. Jake gets in. The guy who owns the snake, we'd agreed that the snake goes back, and then at the end of the match comes out. That way the snake's not in the bag anymore, and, you know, you're looking after the snake. Jake forgets, throws a tantrum, jumps out of the ring, and goes backstage. And in fairness to Flatliner, he got onto the crowd, cutting a promo, distracting them, while I went back to get the snake, to send the snake back out. Just a nightmare. He fell on the ground. He couldn't get up. Flatliner did a great job that night with him. But we had the match. After the match, then I had him do the Polaroids. He was getting ratty with the kids, and he was giving out in course. And I was just like, oh, Jason, had to cut the line off halfway through. Made good money out of it, like, you know. What I used to do with the guys was, the likes of him, big names like that, I'd split it in half. I'd take half, and they'd take half. I'd provide the film. I'd provide the camera. So to me, all those people going away out of the queue, I was just like, that's money walking away. But he was an absolute nightmare to deal with. And for me as a kid growing up, seeing Jake the Snake and watching him, thinking, oh yeah, you know, just two guys I've met who was very disappointed, and one was Finley and one was Jake the Snake. But look, anyone who's ever had an issue with alcohol or was an addict in any way, I've had a family member who was like that. It really takes over your life. And I know people can say, oh, well, still, they did what they did, but under the influence. So it's nice to see that he's not like that way anymore. But you have to talk about these things, because wrestlers don't like to talk about when they know show or what state you were in. But without talking about them, people can't learn from it. Like, you know, you shouldn't turn up to a show in that state. I know nobody wants the money to get whatever, but at the end of the day, you expect someone to be professional. Like, but his life is turned around. God bless him.
I know around that time he killed two of the towns here, working for another promoter and showing up in those states, and they actually had like good crowds, but because he was so screwed up and people had taken their kids and stuff, it took years for those towns to come back. Sadly, but is it true that he had like some wealthy woman in England that he was
Yeah.
living with during that time, and he used all of her money or something?
So I think it was Melanie. I think I was a lovely lady. I was spoken on the phone a few times when you try to get hold of Jake. And I was going to bring Jake back the following year. Oh, yeah, the following year, but you talked to him on the phone, you're like, here, it just goes a mess still. But seemed like a lovely lady, but apparently that's the stories I was told, that he took whatever. But then the story I was told by several promoters was that he wasn't taking care of his snakes that you had, the snakes died. And what's the group that looks after animals, whoever they are, were out to get him apparently, and that's why he had to leave England. I know he speaks very badly of his time in England, wrestling theatres and this and that, but that's the way it is. In Ireland, we've done plenty of theatres. We're just, Ireland's behind England, England's behind America when it comes to kind of that advancement, like, you know. So it was what it was.
I will say though, for the theaters compared to the US and Canada, you have like your own dressing room most of the time, or you're sharing it with 3 or 4 guys. They're clean. They're better than the dressing rooms here overall, but
But the only
I'm
thing we
glad
work in the
Jake's being
theatre,
taken care of now. Oh,
yeah.
sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, with theatres, you really need good lads to know how to walk that one side of the audience. When we used to force the lads, we put headlocks on facing the back wall. So I used to start getting in them to rep to tell the lads, turn around, face the audience. No one on this U shape can see you or hear you. Like, but once the lads got used to that, it was great. So if you are doing a theatre show, or where the fans are just one side of the audience, people don't realise the importance of knowing how to face the crowd, because it's not about the crowd at the end of the day, like, you know. One last story on Jake. So we had the wrestling channel over here at the time, and the guy who ran that was a lad called Sean, an Irish guy, and he was a fan of Jake's as well. So, you know, Sean taped the original Irish Whip shows back in the day, and he was going to do a DVD with Jake, and it was going to be distributed and produced by the wrestling channel. So he had a few meetings with Jake over in England, but he had told me that Jake he wanted crazy money, and he was just making all these mad demands. And he was like, but look, we'll pay you a percentage, you'll make money out of this. And he was just like, I want this money, that money. And it never happened in the end, like, you know. So Jake would probably just think, like, get all this cash out of him and Bob's your uncle, like, off I go. But it didn't happen for him in the end. So I think it's just been greedy. But won't be like, unlike a wrestler to be greedy now, like, you know. So I'm sure he's not alone there.
Now, I know you saw my recent interview with Brutus Beefcake where he said Jake tried to run a show and not pay people and Brutus threatened to walk out. Then he like tried to start a false rumor about Beefcake. Did you hear about any of these events that Jake
Yeah.
promoted?
So at the time, Jake had gotten a sponsor, somebody to fund these shows and best. He built a big 20-foot ring that went to waste, basically. It actually ended up in Northern Ireland, I think. But that ring was built specifically for him and his training skill in those shows. It was too big a ring to be transferred around England and the venues. He brought in Honky Tonk, the Bushwhackers, Greg Valentine, Brutus Beefcake. And I remember I was actually thinking myself at the time of buying one of those shows off in the Portland in Ireland. But the promoter over there said to me, no, do not do that. Like, you'll just have problems. So apparently some places got good houses, some got bad houses. And Jake was withholding pay on the lads, on the American talent. He wasn't giving them what he promised. And I watched that interview with Beefcake, and Beefcake had said how, you know, he was trying to get his money. Well, apparently that's what I'd heard. But Beefcake then in turn had trashed the hotel room. He fucking ruined the house, or as in the venue, the audience that were there. He caused all these problems, became a lunatic basically. And I got his money back by causing destruction. And then he left England. And then on your interview, he said no such thing happened. So it's just crazy the way rumors get started in wrestling, isn't it? And then believed.
Yeah. I know Brutus has a partying side, but he's always been caught like he's not a crazy drunk or a sloppy drunk. He's always fairly mellow. So I actually believe more Brutus on that. Is there any famous wrestlers that had a really wild side other than Jake that you had to deal with over the years?
Oh, wild, I'd say probably. See, over here, you go out and have a few drinks. So to us, wild might be what wild is over in the States or Canada or vice versa. You go out and get drunk at party, you'd be fucking having a great time. But maybe for some people in the States, they'd see that as wild, like, you know. But for us, one guy who was just always, geez, you're watching him all the time was Balls Mahoney. He always had to be the center of attention. He'd go in wearing the same gear. He's always trying to fucking get blood and cutting himself. And you're like, don't do that in the shows. Then you go out and he'd be tapping at his head, trying to get the blood out when you're out in public, up on tables. He'd be trying to start fights with it. Actually, I'll go on to gypsies now in a second. But he'd always try and start fights, and you're like, oh, stop, calm down, fucking, you know. So he'd leave a trailer on page wherever he was, like. But he was tough going. Tough going from the point of view, like, he was a lovable character still, but you're just like, oh, Jesus, let him have a drink, but in his room, rather than let him going out, you know. The guys here, after the movie Snatch, you saw, as in England, they called them pikeys, but over here, they're travelling communities, Irish, gypsies, whatever. And they're tough, hard as nails. So you'd have them at shows, and there's a way to handle them, like, you know, you don't talk to them as if you're, you know, you want to challenge them or fight them, because a traveller will fight you like that, like, you know. And a lot of them have these big sovereigns of rings, so when they hit you, like, they get you, like. So Balls and Vampiro were two guys who always wanted to meet the travellers and have a fight with them. And Vampiro wanted to go off to watch a bare knuckle fight with the travellers. Now, there is ways of finding out where they are. It's not as if it's like entertainment where they're every weekend around the country. It's when there's one on, like, you know. But he wanted to go to one. I was like, it's not like a gentlemanly affair here where you turn up and, you know, if you're a stranger, they'd be watching you, and it's not a very safe environment of what's going on. Anyway, explained all this to him, like, and he met some travellers himself and kind of realised then, like, how legit tough and, you know, real they were. So he stopped asking. Balls saw travellers down in Kilkenny, and he decided to get out of the car and start shouting at them. Going over it, I can fight you guys, and I can do this. And he started, they haven't a clue about wrestling. He's telling all these stories, you know. And they're like, right, boy. And he started taking out big wads of cash. They wanted to fight for money, like, where's your own money? Come on. And then they started getting very tense. This was on the street outside of a chemist or a pharmacy, as it's called in North America. And we were trying to get Balls back to the car. Come on. And Balls back in the car and went, fuck. I fucked up there, like, we were gone, like, you know. But everybody thinks gypsies, Irish travellers are lovable rogues, but they're serious business. Like, have them at the shows. You talk to them like a person, basically, in their language, of why, you know, they can't get into the ring and fight. They'd want to challenge the lads. True is, they get into the lads. Any Irish guy in the scene these days, travellers would beat them up. But I would never be rude to them or nasty to them or say, get the fuck out of here, or yeah, I'll fight you. Because they would just cause ultimate destruction. And I remember one night we had a show down in Waterford on the seafront. It was part of a festival. And around that day, and you're just talking to them. And once you just keep eye contact with them, let them know you're not afraid of them, even if you are, but just there's a way to carry yourself with them. And you were fine. But there was other people at other stalls and security that day of all your events going on. You were just arseholes to them, like, you know, and like shouting at them, however. So the travellers came back down that night. We loaded up the van and they set fire to some of the stuff that was set up for the festival. That was their way of getting back at these guys for being arseholes to them. So, you know, you learn how to handle yourself in a verbal way going around with wrestling as well with the tough guys. It's, you know, it's not all about fighting.
Yeah, I remember meeting gypsies when I was in England, and I didn't realize they were real because I'd only seen them in movies and stuff. I thought they were just made up movie characters. And luckily, I'm a friendly enough guy. I didn't have any issues, other than the one story I told where there was a gypsy drinking pregnant, and another woman wanted to, who was also a gypsy, wanted to fight her because she's drinking while she's pregnant. And it's like, how is that be any more helpful to the baby?
I used to work as a bartender for years in Ireland. And one of the things was when the travellers would come in, you wouldn't serve them because, you know, they come in to have their own bit of crack and bit of fun, but then they get drunk and they end up fighting and blah, blah, blah. And fighting to them is second nature. Like, you know, it's like taking a breath. Or do you take bets around the bar and then you go up to people at the bar going, come on, give me your money for it. And they're like, no. And you threaten the people at the bar. Anyway, I've seen so many fights in the bars and then you stop letting them in. A lot of bars won't let them in because they fight, like, you know. And I remember one time at the bar in the airport, we were coming back from, it was Germany, and there was travellers there in the airport in the bar. And I remember saying to the lads, this is going to turn nasty. Within 20 minutes, erupts and they're off killing each other in the bar. And obviously you have all these tourists not knowing what's going on with these gypsy boxing the head off each other. And they fight like they, you know, I'd be very reluctant to go anywhere near an angry traveller because when they hit to break a jaw or to break a nose, like, you know, they don't just give you a love tap a switch, like, they're serious business, like, you know.
100%. As far as Raven, how was he? Because you sent the poster of, unfortunately, my English stay got cut short, but I was supposed to be on an event with Doug Basham, Balls Mahoney, and Raven was on there. Oh no, maybe Raven. Maybe I imagined Raven.
It was originally Raven. It was originally Raven, and then Raven did some horror movie in Australia. He had to pull out. He gave me plenty of notice, so I was able to put Balls Mahoney in his place. That was a tour, actually. I had you booked for, it was a 2-week tour around Ireland. And in fairness to you gave me notice, but it was after I did the poster. So when I'm doing a big tour, if I get all the posters done together, it's cheaper, you know. So I'd probably get the equivalent of 4 or 5 shows worth of leaflets and posters for free, getting them in bulk, like. So what I would have had that problem a bit, not with Brian Dixon, but there'd be guys who went to work for Brian that would leave early. Or they might, like you were there, was it 6 weeks and you decided you were going home. So I've had that happen a couple of times. So I had some guys advertised that didn't stay with Brian. Or Brian wouldn't let them over here. And you can clearly see Brian Dixon's point of view. If I'm only using them for a weekend or he's using them for a whole 3 months, you know, Brian used to try and get money out of me. Booking fee as such, which I didn't pay. And I can't fault the guy from that, you know. So that's how I didn't end up not using some guys who were supposed to be on shows that were advertised.
Yeah, I remember because I was considering flying from Canada, but it was just going to be too expensive directly. But if you ever do another one, I'll be happy to come. But I know you've moved on from wrestling now.
Just to go back to Raven. So Raven came in the first time. I was actually going to book CM Punk. So there was a guy in England. He would bring in a lot of the guys that would have been at that time on the wrestling channel. Ring of Honor was on. So your indie guys back then, Samoa Joe, there's some Japanese on the telly, and CM Punk and that. So I wanted to book CM Punk to bring it over. This is when I was starting to push Sheamus and getting some of the names in to put Sheamus over. So This guy said, don't use CM Punk. He's a bit of a prima donna. He'll cause you issues. He's hard work, so far. So we're grand. So in his word, I took Raven. So I brought Raven in. This was down in Rochford. Oh my God, talk about prima donnas and problems. That's what Raven was. So I couldn't wait to get rid of that guy. But prior to that, my dad had died at the start of the tour. So this was a week-long tour. My father died. I mean, we had kind of been a strange relationship. He was an alcoholic. We made up just before he died. And I was like, what am I going to do? We're going to do the rest of the tour. Will I cancel? So I said, go ahead. And I left other guys kind of to run things. Now, of course, the wrestlers, when I wasn't there, started taking advantage. But my first show back was the show with Raven. And man, he was being a dickhead. I have the match. I might actually put the match up online. He was there to put Sheamus over, basically. Him and a big English guy, Alex Shane. And he was just an asshole. He just, he talked on the microphone. He did whatever. He came backstage, or he asked, what the fuck do you do that for? That's no use to me. How am I supposed to do whatever there? He was just an arsehole like that. Complete another dickhead. Was raging. I used him. I had him for the training seminar that day as well. I never let the lads buy merchandise off the Yanks. So I wouldn't let the Yanks treat the trainees like mercs, and it worked, they gained respect and so forth. Nobody bought that enough. Raven, he's tried to bitch me. You and your guys bought t-shirts at the train. I said, not there to fucking buy your stuff. You were there to train them. That's what you're getting paid for. Anyway, let's flash forward. I was stuck and I ended up using Raven again. At the last minute, I had somebody pull out of the shows. So there's a poster you were on with Le Resistance. Rennie Dupree, I think there's an issue with Brian Dixon. He went home. Rob Conway was to be his tag team partner. Rob Conway pulled a fast one at the last minute. He had to play out the day before, which you know yourself, traveling to England. You don't just leave Saturday morning, get there Saturday afternoon. It's literally a time difference. So he wanted double pay, which I wouldn't do. He never came. I was having American Dragon, Brian Daniels still at the time. Something happened with him. He had to go back to America as well. So I had to get last minute guys, one of which was Raven. But Raven was completely different. Second time around when I used him. Because he was a dickhead the first time. But he was grand the second time. He did exactly what he asked him to do. No problems on the second time around. So you have to stand up to wrestlers. And I think that's why you have heat with so many wrestlers, because they think because they're big or they're tough or whatever, you have to tell them it's a business at the end of the day. They do what you want, fair enough, but you won't fuck with them. You can leave a wrestler standing around. You cannot pay him. You can give him less. You can report him to the government. So the problem is, just wage you can get back at them the way they try to fuck you over. But I don't do that. I would train them with that, but I've never gone ahead and done it. So look, I'm probably preaching to the choir here, but you have to stand up for yourself at the end of the day,
Oh yeah, because wrestlers will walk all over you, 100%. There's far more worker. Well, maybe not the new breed, because a lot of them are just pure marks, but the old school guys are workers. I didn't like Fit Finley during any of my tryouts, and I mentioned that you didn't really like him either. But here's a fan asking your thoughts on Fit Finley.
So Fit Finley as a wrestler, back in the day, World of Sport, man, I loved the guy. I thought I couldn't wait to see him. Great, a great bad guy. I loved his matches. All positive. I met him in Austria. Like I said, I lived there for a long time. Not a long time, 6 months. And I met him there. Obviously, he was a heel, a bad guy character. I went up to say hello. He told me to get lost. He was really rude to me. Well, look, I put that down to the character was playing. And over there, I was still seen as legit. As in real. When I say real, as in like football or boxing or MMA, the fans over there really believed in paying fines and everything. So I just put it down to that's what it was. And the other guys I'd speak to there, like Robbie Brooks, were all sound. Afterwards, obviously, but then again, he was a face, he was a good guy. Now, with Finley, let's flash forward to the first tryouts we had here in Ireland, the WWE. I got them through Johnny Ace, and Tommy Dreamer was there at the time. Later became Mike Bucci. Nova was not Tommy Dreamer when it came to personality, but it was Tommy Dreamer and Johnny Ace. So we got the lads a tryout. Lads shouldn't have had that tryout. They weren't really ready. It's probably me thinking, oh, this is great. My own kind of ego thinking Irish Whip lads get tryout. Finley did a tryout with Ricky Steamboat. They had no interest in the guys, which I understand because they weren't at the caliber maybe that they thought they were. But I always remember Finley stepping back, like, looking down at me and saying, who's ever training you needs to do this and needs to do that. But I wasn't the trainer. The trainer was an English guy. He was in the ring at the time. So obviously the trainer got pissed off for that. Like, and then he started talking about whiskies and where we were going that night. And it was just like, it's very disrespectful to the lads. But, wrestling back then was different. It wasn't as corporate as it is now, where P's and Q's. So lads had the tryouts that day, and that was it. And I didn't think Philly was nice that day. Backstage, getting changed, we're in the PT room where they, give the guys the massage and whatnot. Some of the guys were coming in and saying hello. Philly was still just standoffish and like looking at you like I want to give you a slap, like, so whatever. It's grand. I just thought it was going to be arsehole that way. And then with the lads in later years trying to get tryouts, Finley had actually sent word, because him and Seamus were riding the car together and they became friends. Seamus didn't want the Irish Whip wrestling lads getting tryouts because of heat he had with myself and with the lads in Irish Whip. And Finley passed it back through Peter Nolte, who was an old school Irish wrestler back in the day and a promoter. He flew the flag for Ireland as well, the partner of Padraig Williams. So that pissed me off with Finley as well. Like, and eventually, one of the guys did get a tryout. This was through somebody else. That Drew McDonald, actually. I don't know if you've heard of him. He was in Stampede back in the day. Have you heard of Drew?
Yeah, I always used to get him confused with Drew McIntyre. But Drew McDonald, yeah, he was the WWE's representative for extras for a while, wasn't he?
That's right. So he got Mandrake, Garrett Kidd, to try out here. Like, like Finley was an asshole to him. The pair of them are from the same region of East and Northern Ireland, like, and he just blew him off, like, so yeah, it's I need to be an arsehole to people, like, But look, then you hear stories from people in the world of sport days, and again, they're just stories. I didn't see any of this happening, but I'm sure the guys with age probably mellowed out, not as. Look, do you know what? Thinking about it now, like back in the day, he had to fight. He came with a tough part in Northern Ireland. He was on a particular side. That's what you grew up with. That's how you were. So I suppose it's the environment you grew up in. Now, I was going to say something there about Drew McDonald. So back then, they just wanted big, tall guys, like, guys who look good. And I always remember Drew.
That's him wrestling for you, by the way, just to interrupt for the fans. Like, that's what
Drew
he looks like
McIntyre.
back when he was wrestling for you. Yeah.
Yeah. So I had somewhat of a relationship with Drew McDonald, kind of a passing relationship when it came to tryouts and back and forth. He ended up giving two Irish Whip guys tryouts. But then he'd ring me about, there's this guy in Northern Ireland you want to check out. He's 7 foot tall. What's he like? And I just said, look, he's not very experienced. He's green. He's blah, blah, blah. I said, but look, I can get you his details, do whatever. So he said, no, the office want him because he's 7 foot tall. That guy got a development deal and he didn't last. I think he had 2 matches, but it used to surprise me that the guys they would sign that weren't very good and they wouldn't last, but the guys who were good didn't get the contracts or the chance or the development system. You used to find it very frustrating back in the day, like, now I didn't wrestle, but for the lads that you knew, you were worth it, like, they just,
It's bizarre at that time, the people that they hired sometimes. By the way, this is Drew McDonald,
yes.
for people that are wondering.
He was a character himself, very well liked by people. And I know the likes of Seamus and Drew McIntyre, when they got there, they buried him as well to Regal and the like. So, guys got there, but there's no reason to bury people back home, Whereas you have like Fergal, Finn Balor, Becky Lynch, they're well respected still in Ireland, because how they carry themselves once they get there, like, So I think once you get to the status of where you're up here, household name, wrestling point of view, wealth, whatever, you made it. Enjoy that. There's no need to keep going back after people back home. You know what I mean? There's something loose up there and keep doing that.
And I don't know if you saw it, but Rick Bassman, I guess, is the one that opened the door for Sheamus to get a tryout, apparently. And then Rick saw him a few months later, and Sheamus completely snubbed him. So that kind of goes with what you were saying about Sheamus.
So here's the truth. I opened the door for Sheamus to get his tryouts, his first tryouts in Ireland. Then I gave him the contact. He went on and did the rest. To be honest with you, Sheamus, everyone takes credit for Sheamus, people in England, Scotland, in America. But what Sheamus did do was He'd ring around everybody trying to, get in here, do this, and he'd bear the other people to get in with them. So I'd say what he did was he rang Rick Bassman, asked him for his help. Rick probably thought he was helping him for the first time, like other guys did in England, and that's where that comes from. Look, I don't want to bury Seamus here. He's not here. He can't defend himself. That's not fair. Like, the guy has done extremely well in his career. God bless him, like, But Seamus is two-faced. If he was to be his real character on WWE, like, I think he'd have a great last run as a heel. It's something between him and Drew, where he turns on Drew, he's sneaky, he's a lick arse, it's all about me, self-gain. I think that'd make a great character for him, and him and Drew would have some emotion to a story for his last run, like, I'm going off topic here, like, but yeah, Seamus is all about me. I had a brand, I had a promotion to push and to build and get over. Seamus just wanted me to get him over. I did get him over, but I was important. My promotion was important. The team was important. So he still holds that against me, like,
I remember Sheamus wrestling Vampiro in Vampiro's movie. Was that from Irish Whip Wrestling?
Yeah. So that was interesting, actually. That was through Z Films, I think it was. The guys came over. Vampiro was on a bit of a tour in Europe at the time. Enjoyed it, actually. I went there, had a few beers with Vampiro. He's a good character. He's a guy who has lots of heat in wrestling, but when he was here, he was fine. He did exactly what I asked him to do. We agreed a payday. I think he came in 2 or 3 times. He wrestled Sheamus 2 of the times he was here. We were down. It was St. Patrick's Day. I think it was the second time was St. Patrick's Day. That's the one that's in the movie. In our little gym, you could squeeze about 100 people into it. That was a very cold day. That was a very interesting day, actually. That was pretty good fun. I like Vampiro. But Vampiro changes his mind like the wind, man. Like the wind. He'd get on to one time. You want me to be a regional promoter for AAA shows here for, what was the show on MTV? Do you remember? It was different. It was pretty cool.
Wrestling Society X.
Wrestling
and then
Society.
yeah.
He wanted me to kind of be the regional promoter for them, and then he changed his mind to somebody else. And then, he was always, you could never take him at his word. Not that he was a bad guy, just he kept changing his mind so much. He forgets something and this and that. Then he wanted me to introduce him to Bono so he could bring over the Guardian Angels, and I had no interest in that, like, But a good guy, very good guy. Every now and then we'll exchange messages here and there. But again, no issues with Vampiro. See, I've had people who have serious heat. People give out shit about them. The likes of Sonny, Vince Russo, for example, Bruce Pritchard. People bury them here and there, this and that. But when they come in here, I ask them, do this, can you do that? This is what you need. And they do it. And you have a chat with them, realistically, and that's it, fine. That's all I'm concerned with. Like, I couldn't care whatever other people did in their own lives, just as long as they come in here and do as they're asked. And that's fine,
Yeah, Vince Russo is very professional, and although his opinions aren't well liked a lot of the time, I could say as a person, he's nice and he's not out to screw you over. He understands how tough it is to promote and stuff.
See,
And like doing podcasts and stuff, he's reliable. He'll show up on time if you book him. He's not a prima donna or anything.
I think the only thing in my opinion, of Vince Russo is I think he tries too much to say controversial things, or he says stuff that he thinks he'll get noticed for. He knows his stuff. He's been there. He's done that, obviously. I think if we just kind of calm down a bit on that, I think he throws out heat magnet materials just to get a response. Whereas Cornette, I don't know you ever see his stuff. It flows to him naturally. So he gets this attention where it seems like he's looking for it. I think other podcasters or other people in wrestling need to be organic. Now, I'm sure Cornette fucking has it all pre-wrote out. He's a long time in the business, but just make it feel organic, I feel. And that's how you get that attention. But Russo, no problems with him at all. I like the guy, actually. He's pretty tall. I was surprised at the height of him. He's a big guy.
You mentioned Sonny. Do you have any stories about Sonny coming there, good or bad?
Oh, Sonny. Talk about workers, complete worker. Very poor house. It was a very bad attendance for her, and it was well advertised. But this was when people were starting to dislike her and this and that. Sonny, if you didn't control her, would fucking walk all over you and she'd bleed, But she got ratty with me over a couple of bits. I got ratty back with her, and that was fine. Went out that day with her, showed her a few bits. She was trying to get me to buy this or get her a tattoo. you're barking up the wrong tree there. Like, I won't be doing that. Go off and find some fanboys that'll do that. But she was fine. We had a chat. We got on. Did exactly what I wanted to do with the show. She had her own voices as such, but we didn't interfere with anything. That's her business. I do remember there was some weird guy turned up at the show, and he was just like staring her, like as if like he was hypnotizing her to come towards him. It's kind of uncomfortable and very noticeable. And if she went to the toilet or she went out to the bar, say to get a glass of water, or whatever during intermission, he'd follow her. We'd have to keep an eye on him, like some crazy wrestling fans out there. Anyway, I thought it was funny how she would work us at the bar, and she get free drinks out of them, and then she get us drinks through them. You know what I mean? And then with the guy go to the toilet, and she'd go back, whatever. Like, you'd learn a few bits here and there, but you could tell where she had her issues. And it's like a lot of people, like wrestling in general, attracts a lot of people with trauma, I should say, bad childhoods, single parent homes, maybe just with death in the family, and addiction. I mean, self included. Like, I was an alcoholic. It attracts those kind of people, and like wrestling, it's like comic books, really, isn't it? Or video games. It's that instant gratification where you see someone who's powerful and something you can control. Like you're in control reading your comic book or playing your video game. Like, if you get into wrestling, you control your character. Whereas with MMA and boxing, it's not. It's a legit sport. It's, you can't go in there and say, I'm doing this and that. Like, so again, I think wrestling attracts those kind of people, and then they get into it and realize when they deal with people like myself or whoever else who look at it professionally, then you take it so personally. This is not what I was expecting, and they don't evolve as a person, like, or mature, I should say. But you do a whole podcast.
Do I dare ask if you're one of Sonny's conquests?
No. I'm a very faithful man. A very faithful man.
Oh, are you married?
I was married, but I'm with a long-time partner now, the last 10 years, and yeah. But no, I'm not one of our conquests. Yeah, so
she was up now here working for me. She was sober, surprisingly.
She was which?
Sober. She she was going through a period where she had stopped drinking around 2008.
And how was she when she was with you?
She was fine. She was demanding, as you mentioned. She was demanding, but she was sober, so she wasn't dealing with personal issues. And she was friends with Brutus. Brutus was on that same tour, so she seemed happy that tour.
Yeah. Look, people in wrestling, if they can work it, they'll work it, get this out. Like, you probably had it as a promoter. The wrestlers come in and you try to get you to put the belt on them. Or you put the belt on me, name recognition, I'll bring you here, bring it there. But they're just doing that, so you'll bring them back. And you can put the price up of their booking fee when you bring them back, so you have to bring them back, like, They're always trying to work it, wrestlers.
Last thing on Sonny, we'll ask this fan question. What are your thoughts on what happened with her? Sadly, she could be in jail for, like, I think up to 25 years.
The sad part is she didn't help herself with her drinking. And I know, like I said, my dad was an alcoholic, so I know it's easier said than done. If she had had that help or helped herself, whoever, it would have made a big difference. So it's sad that her life went down that way. And it's also sad that she didn't learn from having so many DUIs where a man lost his life. There has to be consequence to your actions, and her actions is now she's in jail. And again, I mean, if you look at her, she had a career, what she looked like in the day and so forth. I genuinely hope she can work things out for herself in prison, like, because she worked for you. You can tell, but once you get to know her and talk to her properly, she's a good person. And deep down, but that's when you see through the blanket of the drink and the alcohol and the supercilious character. Like most people, alcoholics, there's a good person there that can't get out, hence the addiction,
The one thing with the ex-WWE people, at least they have the opportunity to get free rehab. So if they don't make use of it, I have less sympathy for them for a normal person who can't afford rehab.
I know that's a great service that they give. It must be a tax break. It must be some write-off that you can do that, because there's other group issues that you could do to help ex-wrestlers, that they don't do. But it's great to have that service there. And like you said, nail on the head, if people don't use that facility, then it's on them. It's not on the WWE. They're offering it to them, like, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I was always insulted by how much Billy Graham, he's a true icon of wrestling, and he was never like you could say he was addicted to steroids, but he didn't ever have alcohol or drug issues, although he took speed and pain medication over the years. But he never went to rehab, but they didn't help pay for his medical issues ever, which he was poor and it really could have helped. So it's too bad that they will help drug users, but not necessarily people like Billy Graham's hips were shot, and he could never actually afford to ever get the hip operation, and that was wrestling related.
See, that's the thing. Maybe it's not a tax write-off for them. If they could claim, I assume now, just my thoughts, maybe they can't claim it back as a tax write-off. That's why they don't help that way. Now, personally, I feel they should, but they don't do it that way. Like, you know, they'll pay for it, as you said, the rehab. Like in Ireland, if someone is an ex-heroin addict, they'll send them off to pay for this and pay for that and whatever. People who have cancer often have to go through their own journey and pay their own bills. So that's not right either. Like, but again, it comes down to finances and how policies and procedures are put together from a legal point of view. So I'm sure in WWE, it's possibly something like that. But like with Billy Graham, they should, for people who they would have made a lot of money off Billy Graham back in the day. So the least you could do was pay for medical bills, you know.
Now, you had some contact with WWE because they ended up buying your Irish whip wrestling footage, I believe. Could you explain that?
That's still up in the air. That's a mess. So they contact, well, on and off over the years, they've licensed some footage from me for various bits and pieces. Grant, I would do that. During COVID, they wanted stuff for Drew McIntyre. I had said no, because during COVID, you know, that's when I stopped running shows and I started to, you know, realize there's a world beyond wrestling again. Like, so I just said, no, lads, I'm not interested. Thanks for the offer, but I'm not interested. They got back saying, Drew really wants it, so far, so on. What can we do? Just, and I said, well, look, if you want to buy the whole lot off me, I said, I explained what you had. I said, you can buy everything off me and whatnot. And they said, right, grand. And they brought in the various people from the different departments. We had Zoom calls, meetings, the whole lot. That's grand. Sent everything over, every last bit of stuff. Grand will get the paperwork together. I was given a preliminary offer, which I asked for a little bit more, but that wasn't the actual offer. You're just testing the waters, like, you know. So that was grand. But nothing was happening. And then they started using the footage without paying me or having a license agreement. So if you remember when you had the Fast Lane shows, the first show they had with Peacock. So they used the footage on that and you put a nice little story thing together, that's fine. But just pay me at the end of the day. You know, I don't get all excited. Like back when they started out first, you'd get excited seeing, you know, your product or whatever mentioned in the magazine or in telly, but it gets to a stage where just give me the money, like, you know. They didn't do that. So I got on to them, we complained a whole lot. Like, long story short, they paid me for most of it. And he said, right, I offered a retainer. X amount of money, you can use whatever you want until the sale goes through formally. No, we'll pay as it goes along. Then they got on to me again with a piece they wanted to use. Shane was taking a dig at Irish Whip. You know, it's just like, come on, give up, man. You're a multi-millionaire. You've been there, you've done that, you help out 6 children, you're your hero, like, but just get over it, like, you know, go out and pay for therapy or whatever, like. So I said, no, I won't do that. And then they offered me above what the license fee was, and I still said no, grand. Then they used more footage without paying me. And I got on and said, lads, what's going on here? Like, you got, oh, right, send me all the paperwork, filled it all out, for accounts, your WBN forms and everything, sent the whole lot back, grand, and still waiting to get paid. And then I was told at the time you were going to be buying the Houston wrestling library. Now, I won't get into that because it's not my business to get into it, but there was issues there with the owner of that footage. So I was told I was next in line. Once that bit of business was sorted, my paperwork was signed off and grand. That didn't go ahead with Houston. So I said, right, grand, here we go. And again, contact me and what's going on? Nothing. So now they ghost me, as in they won't answer my emails and whatnot. I inquired with a legal person over there, and they had told me the time frame and all that. So W have been very smart. Just gone on 4 years now, like, you know, they own everything in mind. They have it all over there. They keep forgetting exactly is what they have. I'm shocked at it, like, to tell you the truth, like, because it's WWE. They said it was COVID, people let go, losing track of it. I sent everything via their FedEx account, so it's all traceable, like, you know. I'm very disappointed in that now, to tell you the truth, especially now that they're owned by TKO, Endeavor, isn't it? The parent company, like, you know. So, just very, very disappointed in that. So, they still have my footage. They still not own, but they have ownership of the physical product over there, like, you know.
You mentioned Finn Balor, not Becky Lynch. Her name is slipping me. Who's the woman from? Is it Becky? It is Becky Lynch and Sheamus. They're the three Ireland WWE
Yeah,
wrestlers,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Who's looked at as like the most beloved of those three over there?
Probably, that would definitely Fergal and Becky. Out of the two of them, probably Fergal or Finn Balor. Finn Balor, I'd say. Um, Finn's the real deal. Like, he's like an athlete and so forth. People speak very highly of him. He's very nice to people he was friends with. He stays in contact with them. Yeah, so there's joy around him being where he is. There's joy around Becky Lynch from their camps, like, you know. That's not to say there's no joy here. Those people came from working class background to be multi-millionaires, and Jesus, fucking brilliant. Like, you'd want that for your own kids and other people out there hoping to live their dreams. They've lived their dreams. But Sheamus is the other way. Now, it's his own fault. I'm sure there's, you know, I might actually do a show myself around Sheamus, because I have all this footage of him and stuff like that. People who would come on and say whatever, but I don't want to bury the guy. But even though he buries me non-stop, I won't say any more about him. But Sheamus, like I said, he was always very much about himself, what he could do. I remember, example, one TV tape where you had Puck in. I think that's pronounced him Puck, isn't it? Puck, the English guy, and
I don't know if I know him.
He's in AEW now. He was the small character Neville in
Oh yeah,
WWE.
yeah. I don't remember his. The Bastard or something is
Yeah,
his
yeah.
nickname, but I can't
So
remember his.
he has all these spectacular moves. You know, great shape. He's everything except promos. Mic skills are pretty brutal. But he came in. I was doing these spectacular moves, the splash and this and that, and then. So even though it's the one show, the one TV taping, there was 3 shows together. So on the TV, it looks like it's 2 weeks later, but on the night, it's only like, like 6 matches later. Shane would start doing one of his moves, another guy's moves, and I'd be like, you can't do other guys' moves. I said, how am I going to get over? It's like, just don't be stealing things off other people. Like, you know, do your own stuff. Like, he has done tremendous. And to put him over here, it's the only guy I saw that really, really put the work in. Now, I know he had the advantage of being big and looking good, but he got himself that way. It's not as if he woke up in the morning and he had muscles and tall. Like, you know, he put the work in. He deserves to be where he's at, 100%. Just while he was here, I had a promotion to get over, a promotion to build a brand. It wasn't all about Sheamus. I gave out to him a few times. I actually gave him his training for free. We had been friends. We'd worked together in the bar. We had a bad experience in America. Here you go. Training is free. Won't charge you a penny. A bartering system. You put guys up in your house, turn guys. That way you can pick their brains and get to know them, drive them around. Great relationship. But then when he left, he started saying I took advantage of him, which I don't know how he did. You know what I mean? I got him noticed on these TV shows and all that. But fair play to him. You know, top shelf guy. He's done great. And I think he still has one last one left him in the WWE with Drew if they build a proper story, emotional story, like, you know.
Of course, Drew just signed for reportedly up to $4 million. Finn's amount hasn't been disclosed yet, but Becky Lynch, her contract's coming up very soon. She could make a massive amount of money because AEW is also interested in her, but she holds the WWE title. Do you think she's going to stay in WWE and just to play the negotiations?
To be honest with you, it depends what way you look at it. Does she look at it as a parent, more time with her child? That's one way to look at it and make a decision. If you're looking from a professional point of view, it's WWE or top dog. You know, exposure, the money, the contacts. I think she has a career in movies, action star. So long-term professional career, she should stay with the WWE. She probably will. If it's just for more family time and a later schedule, obviously you'd go to AEW, you know. But look at all the talent they brought in. Now, if you're a talent, I'm sure it's brilliant that AEW sitting at home and getting paid a fortune, like, you know. Actually, we'd be here all day talking about that kind of stuff. But regardless if she never works another day in her life, she's done extremely well for herself, you know, and her family.
As a promoter, I know it's impossible to look at it as Tony Khan, who's a billionaire, whose dad is a billionaire. But what do you think? They have so many wrestlers, way too many to showcase on TV, and there's all these guys that maybe wrestle once a month if they're lucky. And I think the minimum pay is 150 grand American, from what I heard in AEW. Most of them make more than that. What do you think of that?
Now,
Good for
for
them.
me, I don't really watch wrestling. Well, I don't watch wrestling anymore, but I follow wrestling. So, say, channel clips on YouTube like your own, and there's other channels out there I'd watch, or news sites. So when I see something, I go check it out. And what stuck out in my head was I remember I'd been watching some wrestling during COVID. Obviously, there was nothing else to do really. And there was all these factions in AEW, and you're like, oh, yeah, it's throwing people together. But WWE, when I went to watch a match that was recommended to me, I noticed they had all these factions and whatnot, and groups of people together, all these different tag matches. But you didn't notice because the product was so well put together in WWE. You didn't notice they were factions. Whereas in AEW, they're just slinked together, like, you know what I mean, as numbers more or less to get them out on screen. So with AEW, they just look. The guy, hats off to him. If you think about what he's done, money in his contacts, he's set up that huge promotion, burst out of the gate. If it goes down, a lot of people will lose jobs, lose livelihoods in front of the screen, behind the screen. You don't want that to happen. But he has so many people there who can help him that he doesn't use. I'm sorry you should hear all people on the ground. Like, he's a lovely chap, like, as a human being. And I've seen people like that in wrestling, nice human beings that think they're going to come in and help wrestlers, and they just take advantage of that, like, you know. So what he needs to do is hand the reins over to somebody else to bring it back up from where it is. And WWE, and you know, they're just, it's night and day. You can't compare yourself to WWE. So just stop trying to do that. He's making his product, his brand look weak by just saying some of the ridiculous things he's saying on TV, like, you know. And
And
for
also
me,
not giving anyone else a chance to talk because he's doing all the media appearances. Like, he's supposed to be injured. He could be sending someone else to do that and say Tony Khan's, maybe not for the NFL draft stuff, but he's also doing other media appearances.
but also you have three brands, haven't they? Collision, Dynamite, and there's a third, Rampage is the third one. WWE have three as well, like, so, but they use a completely different set of wrestlers for each one. Why can't he do that? You know, you're getting all those guys in the contract and you're putting them out there, like, and they're making so many mistakes in the ring, and it's just, you know, it's frustrating for me watching it. You know, from being promoted. Like, I don't know what it's like to have a budget at the level he has and deal with the kind of TV stations he does. I'm looking at it from an independent point of view, but there's so many other ways you can make that run properly. Any promotion that brings in big chunks of money are successful, regardless if it's a profit or not. If they're losing more money than they're bringing in, that's completely different. You know, someone might have a write-off every year of, say, 150 grand, you can get it back in tax, whatever, big things like that, ways around it. Like, Netflix are in debt technically, but they're making money if you're into the logistics of that. AEW can do that, but they're not. You're just washing money, throwing it all over the place, like, you know. Yeah, it's just frustrating to watch. I think the best thing for me when I watch wrestling, when I watch some AEW stuff, it's always through Cornette. Say he'd have a video talking to someone, I'd listen to his video, and then I'd watch the match based on that. Like, it's kind of humor. So that's the excitement for that, as opposed to what the content is like. You know, it's wrestling change. No tough guys in the match. It's not wrestling. It's not fucking fighting. It's not like All Japan back in the 90s. Like, you know what I mean? It's soft now these days. You know.
It looks like they're cooperating a lot of the times and just performing stunts rather than actually letting you suspend your like the Tony Khan getting injured thing. It didn't look intense. It looked like they were protecting him and the Meltzer driver, whatever they call it. Like, that's nothing you would ever use in a real fight.
Do you know
Doesn't
what?
even look real.
I thought it was hilarious when I watched it. He was punching the stomach and he went back in a Y shape, like he was shot, taken out by a sniper. And then you see him like a few seconds out, grabs. Now, in fairness, he's not used to doing that and whatnot. But you think they would have practiced it and practiced it and practiced it and practiced it, and then it's perfect on TV, like, you know. How they didn't do that is just stupid. It really is.
You
Um,
think AEW doesn't come to Ireland just because they want to get as many people to travel to that Wembley show as possible, and that's the reason they don't do any smaller shows throughout Europe?
I'd say it could be. I know for me, when I ran shows, I used to think I will do the major town or city in that county, and people travel from the smaller towns. So with him, he's probably thinking that way at Wembley. Do a big stadium, everybody travelled to me, and there was people there from all over the place. But I also found out when you went out to the smaller town, you had to put the work in. The smaller towns in the same counties or provinces did very well. Sometimes you'd make better off weekend spots than you would in the major town. Like, so he has the numbers, he has the money, he has the marketing team. Why he can't be doing like say one show in Europe, bunch of house shows, while he's still doing his regular TV shows in the States? You know, it's just stupid. Or wherever you have TV. I don't know, the big say in, I don't know, where else? Australia. Maybe have a tour down Australia. You can put guys out on the road and bring that money in, like, but they're just not doing that, like, you know.
Yeah, because they would draw in places that aren't oversaturated like over here
Yeah.
is. There's a fan on here that wants to know your opinion on the Vinnie Mac situation.
Right, it's crazy stuff, but it's wrestling. I'm sure he's not the only billionaire to have skeletons in his closet, like, you know. But I work a lot. I work actually in a trade union, and we help people. We listen to various sides of different stories before we can help people, members on the ground, workers. So I would be at the angle of wait until all the information comes in before anyone makes any decisions or name calling and such, like, you know. That's not to say nothing happens, but the way I read it is just from my experience of looking at corporate correspondences and or employments and employers and trade unions. There's two sides to this story. Both of them, I think, have taken advantage of each other. Obviously, at the end of the day, it can be one victor, not a victor financially, but a victor of, you know, getting the hand slapped. And I think people need to get their hand slapped and suffer the consequences. But yeah, I would like to cast any name calling on people for something that hasn't been proven yet in a court of law, like, you know. But it's not surprising something like that has happened in wrestling. I'm sure you've seen crazy stuff happen on the independent scene that we're going out there. You know what I mean? There'll be plenty of people spoken about for years to come, like, you know.
Yeah, but nobody cares about it unless they're a multimillionaire like Vince McMahon. And it's actually not too bad in Canada from what I've seen at my level. But it does seem, as you said, there could have in that situation. It does seem like both sides have taken advantage of each other in different ways. Reading the defense documents that came out last week. As far as Billy Jack Haynes, I know you sent something to him. He's in prison right now, waiting trial. I don't think he's going to get bail due to the way that bail works in Oregon for people accused with murders. But that's nice of you to try and send him something. And what are your thoughts on the whole Billy Jack Haynes situation?
If I could just say, regards to send the stuff to Billy Jack Haynes, what I didn't realize at the time, just in case anyone out there wants to send them anything, if you send money or a book or anything like that, it's not accepted. So if you're going to send that, and like me, I made a mistake of sending all that stuff together. It came through John. Is that the chap? Jonathan, I think, had said if you're sending him a book, say it has to be sent through Amazon. So order it on Amazon and send it to him. Trying to give him a deposit, so some money to buy snacks. The whole system you have to go through. That website is blocked in Ireland, like, you know. So yeah, it's trying to send them some stuff is pretty hard, but you know, an actual letter is grand, but you won't take any money or books if you send anything you send yourself personally. Anyway, with Billy Jack Haynes, again, it's unless you know the personalities and the people, like, you know, was it a mercy killing? I mean, if he has his own issues, his own mental health, I've seen people with dementia. I've worked around people with dementia, and I can only imagine the hardships people go through. People who have it, but I mean, can you justify killing anybody? I mean, I know they're trying to bring these pods in that you have in, I think, Sweden. They're more or less suicide pods. People come in, and if you get ticked off by a medical profession that you're justified to kill yourself early if you have some disease that's eating you alive or whatever. Even that's controversial, let alone ending somebody's life if they ask you. So it's a tough one. But I think two people were in pain there, like, you know. Unfortunately, one of those people since passed away, but like I think it's again a double shot of pain. There's never any just one side to a story, like, you know. But I remember him as a kid growing up. I thought he was a great character, just how he looked and the whole lot. And then he was gone. He was gone. Like, I just thought he was growing up as a kid, how he looked and the hat and the cowboy look. But he wasn't like your typical cowboy. Obviously, as time goes on, you find it was from Oregon and whatnot. But he looked different. He had something to him, like, you know.
For sure. And anyone that wants the prisoner information, click on this link and you can send them stuff or find out more. As far as the alleged the assisted suicide defense, one thing that he screwed up on, which I don't know if it would have helped, but the lawyer mentioned he should have got her to like write a note saying she was okay with it. But we all know the way Billy Jack Haynes thinks, and that may not have come to his mind. But sad
But,
situation.
but again, that could be argued. The family could say maybe he forced her at gunpoint to write that as well. Like, so it's,
Yeah.
you know, it's a very tough situation, like, you know.
The sad thing is, I'm friends now with his cell. He has a good cellmate. That's one good thing, because
Excellent.
I've been falsely imprisoned, and cellmates make big difference. But apparently, like, he still seems to be he's not really understanding like the severity of his situation. Like, he may actually be in there for the rest of his life. So I feel for him. Someone wants to know, do you think Connor is actually going to fight Chandler at UFC this July? I think it is. I think so.
Look, at this stage, you wouldn't know with Conor McGregor. Comes in and pulls out stuff. Seeing him now, I don't think so, because over here in Ireland, like, I've been to his pub slash restaurant, the Black Forge. I was actually barred out there years ago. I got so drunk I actually puked on the table. That's going back to, I think that was the mid-90s. But that was a real rough pub, real tough, like, Dublin pub. And Conor was barred out there, I believe, back in the day as well, as I'm sure a lot of people were. And he came back and he bought it. But I have to say, it's a great spot. Food, drink, everything. The service in it is top class. It's very much like American type service where customers are always right. So anyone visiting Ireland, I would recommend go to his restaurant. The pub is lovely for food. It's really top class. And he's in there the odd time, and he'll pose with people, he'll talk to them and whatnot. Like, it's a great spot. Only bad thing is not much parking if you're going with the bus or get a taxi. But I'm going off topic here. He's always parking, always fucking out parking. So I don't know if he'll go ahead and have that fight. I don't think he'd be in a fit state to have that fight. If you notice any of his fights, he gasses up pretty quick as the fight goes on. So I don't think that's going to change. So I'm sure he has these top shelf people, trainers telling him that. Like, so I won't be surprised if it didn't go ahead. If we can come in there, actually, it's in my head now. Coach Kavanagh. So John Kavanagh, who's his coach, who trained him in the whole lot, started up Strike Blast Gym. I actually used him in Irish Whip back in the day when we started out, around 2004, I started the promotion in late 2001, early 2002. Started a school in 2004. And I brought him in to do actual grappling training, like shoot style wrestling with the lads. Nobody wanted to do it. You're all afraid. So just goes to show you the type of characters in wrestling. We'd worked out a price we're going to charge the lads. Lads only wanted like celebrity name wrestlers to come in so they could be around them. But I always remember he actually helped me get better insurance, actually. The Combat Sports Academy, I think it was at the time, but they're still going. Somebody ratted me out to them and said that wrestling was very dangerous and people get hurt in it. So they cancelled my policy after a year and a half, which I think is gas. They're covering combat sports, cover boxing and MMA and jiu-jitsu, but yet you don't cover pro wrestling because people get hurt. But yeah, he was a good guy. So he was involved in Irish back in the early days, but I ended up not going anywhere because people are just afraid to train with him, like, which unfortunate.
Have you seen the new Roadhouse starring Connor yet?
Yeah. The original Roadhouse, man, is brilliant. I love that film. It's got like character to it. Like he's fighting against the town bully and just love, just friendship. In the remake, there's none of that. It's just nonsense. But I have to say, McGregor's hilarious, isn't it? He over the top acting. You almost think he's purposely trying to act bad, but in doing that, he's the best thing in the whole film. Like just his character. So I could see him doing more films if he has that character. Like at the end of his storm now at the hospital, like he's Jaws out, James Bond films, like, you know.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to see that. I don't have Amazon, but I'm gonna try and look that up because I've seen the original Roadhouse with Terry Funk at least probably
Yeah,
30
he's great
times
in
over
that.
the years. You already answered this as far as Seamus and Balls Mahoney. Someone is wanting to know if there's anyone else that has been difficult to work with that
Just
Americans
to go
might
back
know.
there, Balls and Seamus, I wouldn't say, yes, they were difficult, but I wouldn't paint them as, don't book them because they're difficult. And unfortunately, Balls have passed on. But once you broke down that wall with Balls, he was fine. You know what I mean? It's just crazy. You just had to keep him in line because that's the character he was. Raven was difficult the first time he came in. Kid Cash was difficult the first time he came in. Vito was difficult the first time they came in. But once you have those chats with them, they calm down. Like Kid Cash, I remember he was in England the night before he came here, and he was in the ring with Puck to go Puck again, and apparently he beat the crap out of him in the ring. Now, next day there was a guy, Madman Manson, pulled me inside. He was on the show the night before in England for, I think it was 1PW, and he said, "Geez, wait to see Puck." Kid Cash did a number on him last night. So something made a black guy had all this. Now I know Cash likes to lay it in. In fairness to Puck, I said, "Look, I have you in with him today. I'll change the match if you want." And he said, "Oh, it's fine. I'll stay with him." So I had a chat with Cash, and I said to Cash, "Take it easy. I don't like that. The shows, but lads purposely getting stiff or roughed up just to do it." Like, and he said, "Yeah, no problem." But just the way he said, "Yeah, no problem," more or less to me, like he walked off. I was thinking that was a bit too easy. Like, because normally you kind of back and forth with them. So we get in the ring with an Irish guy here called Bam. It was a tournament for the Zero Gravity Championship, and he got this guy Bam, a young guy. He was a real soft, mammy's boy type, like, but he was an Irish whip character, like, so he's putting him in there for the experience, but he roughed him up, dragging him around by the hair, chopping him, baiting him, the whole. And then after the match, he just gave me a look, Cash, which I think that was his way of saying, "I didn't ruffle Pack, but you didn't say anything about him," like, But he was difficult in his own way. But again, once you got to know him, he was fine. Difficult. Just guys who won't be any names. Like, there's been Irish guys who were just a pain in the hole. English guys who just come in like prima donnas, like they just think they're somebody because they've wrestled somebody, like, yeah. The thing with difficult wrestlers is, one, just don't book them again, or two, tell them they've been dickheads, and if they are being dickheads and don't take that, well, tell them, don't pay them, take that. I've often done that with guys, just not put them on the show, like no name guys, like,
And just not related to wrestling, but you always hear about Ireland. Have you ever experienced anything like that for the fans of that type of topic?
Sorry, Hannibal, I lost you. Have you ever experienced which?
Oh, sorry. Like any hauntings or anything in Ireland, because you
Oh
always hear
yeah,
that
Jesus
Ireland is a
Christ.
very haunted place.
I've experienced both in wrestling and outside of wrestling. We used to do this little resource centre down in a little town in Offaly. And I remember there was this one particular spot. You'd walk over it and it was freezing cold. Like, the whole building you're walking, this one particular spot was always icy. And I remember talking to the caretaker. So what's going on there? And that apparently these monks, it was a part of a monastery a couple of centuries before. The building of the monastery is still there in the background, but this part was owned by the town. So it was people apparently, and that's what was where they used to kill people back in the day in the monasteries, people who were non-Christian. That's what he told me. Leap Castle. I used to drive past there. That's on the back roads between towns around Clare and Tipperary and Leash. And every time you drive past there, just aura, just horrible, nasty, kind of evil feeling to it. Balls Mahoney, he was a Satanist and all this, so he was mad into haunted places. When he was here, we had time, we'd go to some haunted places, and they'd be, you'd hear things, and then you take the phone out. Do you know what they're going about orbs and all this? How you'd actually see the orbs, but in certain, like, if it was just dust, or whatever being knocked around the room, you'd see it in all the rooms. But certain rooms where you'd feel that extra chill, you'd have these little orbs that would just vanish, whereas a dust spot would just stay there, But you have come across loads of that over the years, like some places where you'd actually be a little bit intimidated walking one part of the building to the next. And so I suppose we're spoiled here. There's some buildings I've done now, they're gone, like long gone now, don't use them anymore. But there were theatres that were there like 200 years, or buildings that were part of a complex that was like fucking hundreds of years old, just neglected and run down and haunted as the stories go. Yeah, you'd often get these chills or you'd hear things
Very interesting. And as far as like living in Ireland now, like, obviously in the 90s, we always heard about all these crazy conflicts going on. How are things over there now, as
See,
far as like the political and everything?
this is the thing. Like back in the day, I didn't live through that. I lived through the version of it down here in Dublin, but I was never up in the north living through that. And for people who are up there, regardless of Protestant, Catholic, pro-English, pro-Irish, a horrible experience from people you talk to, and it's all changed now. It's still there. It's still there. If you go up there, you still have the hatred there. I think there's more of a hatred from one side towards the other side, if you ask me. But it's calmed down a hell of a lot to where it was. And then what's great with wrestling is you have people working together in both communities, both sides. That's brought people in there, And I think the ice hockey did that as well. But compared to what it was, it's night and day compared to what it was. We have Irish Catholic members of Parliament now that are going in there. You still have your orange bands marching. And orange bands, depends what way you look at it. You could look at that from an Irish Catholic point of view up there. They would be like the Ku Klux Klan going into an all-black area. Or for them, it would be their, like you say, Israelis, this is, whatever land, and we're just doing what we're here to do. So depending on what side you're on, you can see the positive, the negatives, the hatred, the whatever. But I do know people who were involved with certain things there, and it turned a lot of people into alcoholics, addicts, took their own lives. People did things to defend their communities that they were later, I don't know if I'd use the word shameful, but it played on their brain. So there's a big aftermath of everything that went on up there for families, and there's families who are never found again. But I'm going off topic, family members, I should say, it's calmed down compared to what it was. I remember with Irish Whip, I had to change the name. Some posters you'll see International Wrestling Warriors, because I made the mistake of going up at Irish Whip wrestling in places that weren't Irish friendly, and there'd be nobody at the shows, or you get all this verbal abuse. Then I just call it whatever, International Wrestling Warriors. And people think that's a new company of change have gone away. No, it's just to keep everything happy. I remember one time, actually a few times, used to a place up in, you have the Shankill Road and you have Falls Hill. Sorry, Shankill Road and Falls Road. Falls Road is Irish Catholic, Shankill is staunch Protestant, Lyle's British. So there's a place up there called the Shankill Leisure Centre, but there was two of them. I didn't realise at the time, so they bought a show off me. I went up there. They were trying to get both communities together, like the kids, and get it going. And Seamus and Drew were on that. They were the two big names. And then we picked up Puck at the airport. Puck used to come in and out of Irish Whip, and he wore a big emerald green hoodie. I remember saying to him, "You might not want to be wearing that hoodie when you go up there." But we went to the first resort leisure centre first, wrong by mistake. But people wouldn't give you directions because your license plates would be from Dublin, they completely ignore you. And they come out to the doors looking around. And I just remember these big, intimidating wrestlers who actually weren't big and intimidating. We were just trying to run back on the bus. Then we got to the real centre. I remember Seamus wore black. He didn't want to be put over as a big Irish face. And, it was an experience, but fortunately, there was a lot of hatred there still. Badly attended, probably 150, 180 people at those shows where you were expecting this sell out as such. I think we did 3 shows then. We had to stop doing. You just kept making threats towards us, you're going to cause damage, and I'd have to pay for the coach to bring everyone up. The coach would leave and go back and collect everybody. But yeah, it's changed now. And back in the day, you had your Irish wrestlers. You had your Fifth Finleys, various Irish guys who were Northern Irish, predominantly Protestant. So there was a big wrestling scene up there. Fifth Finley's father was a promoter and wrestler. So it wasn't really it was Northern Ireland wrestling, but it was kind of more British wrestling as such. Like you never really had that down in Ireland. Ireland was the predominant promoter down there, the 60s to the 80s. So there was never really an Irish scene of Irish promoters since the day of Dan O'Mahony back in the 1930s up to the 50s. He did shows in Ireland. So all the shows that would go around. People think there was never any wrestling in Ireland before WWE, or there's no independent before Irish Whip. There was always Artie Williams, and he had a partner called Peter Nolte, and they would do shows around Ireland. Were all the big names back in the day that you can think of, like, you know. But you never know you're on because you're just promoted locally, like. But I got to see a few of those shows by chance. You'd see a poster up in the window somewhere. But there was wrestling in Ireland, which no one knew it was on, like, you know, because it was regional. Probably went a bit all over the place there with that answer.
Yeah, and this will be the last question. It's not even wrestling, but this guy has become a member. Thank you, John, for becoming a member. He wants to know what you think of the influx of immigration to Ireland and Europe overall, which
But
I
look,
definitely saw it when I was there, but I don't know much about it myself.
well, Irish have gone all over the world. You populate a good portion of the world. So you have to open up to people coming in, and a process has to be followed. I think once a process is followed, policies and procedures, that's what needs to be done. There's not enough information given out there to people to make up their minds, and the government are at fault there. So they need to just educate people more on what's happening. It's EU policy, really. If you notice, England broke away from the EU. So a lot of stuff is EU rule. It's a very touchy subject in Ireland. But look, I can remember when I was at the 100 years of freedom for Ireland, there was an Easter March. And it was, like back in the day, when we had the uprising against the British Empire, try and win back the country. That was in 1960. Before that, it was going back centuries fighting the British. But this was the turning stone when they killed a lot of Irish people, made them martyrs, and eventually, within 5 years, Ireland was, you know, Republic of Ireland had its freedom. But we had no army back then. You know, everyone that went off to fight as a soldier were part of the British Army. They trained them. So we're standing there in the city centre, and very proud moment. We have our own version of our army and soldiers, everything going up and down the road. It was a great day. But you had people there from Eastern European countries, from Asia, and people there from Brazil, South America, North America, England. I just thought that was absolutely brilliant. So many nationalities there in a country where 100 years ago, everyone was desperate to leave and take it out. I don't, if you can see on the wall, the painting I have there on the wall behind me, that is where I'm. So, yeah, that's a painting of, that is the River Liffey. That's down at Liberty Hall on your way down to the Tree Arena where they do their wrestling shows. But that's where the famine ships left were, the ones that went to America, Canada, England. You have some memorials down there. But yeah, but that actually there, you can't really see it in the picture, but you have a famine ship there. It's a replicated one. That's where all the ships left from Ireland, predominantly to go to America and Canada back in the day. So I think it's great to see a country that was struggling to where now we can open our doors up to other nationalities as long as you follow the correct policies and procedures. If I can just go back, I saw a question there. Somebody said I was upping a murderer. I saw it there on one stage. What's that about? I don't remember putting
Oh,
over.
well, Billy Jack Haynes, I think that had to do with Billy Jack Haynes, but he has not been found guilty. And well, there's definitely
Yeah, who would
mental
help a
health
murderer?
issues going on. Who would help a
So,
murderer? I think he was referring to that I had mentioned Billy Jack Haynes, and we had talked about you tried to send him stuff. Um, but he's actually
see,
not been convicted of it.
but that's what we're talking about there. Like, I mean, assisted suicide is one thing, but just, you know, verbal agreements between people is completely different. So I didn't go out there and murder anybody. So that's on the list. Come here. I had a question here. I wanted to ask you two things. One is Puerto Rico. One is the film, the wrestling movie with the mask, Grunt, the wrestling movie. And that was, you're a big fan of that movie, yeah?
Oh, I love that movie. It's one of my favorite movies.
I saw that as a kid as well in the video store. I rented it out and just, I must have watched it about 10, 20 times as a kid. Loved it. It was a very tongue-in-cheek, cheesy take on wrestling, but it's just pure comedy, like, you know. How it didn't survive the test of time, I don't know, like, you know. But
I actually interviewed Mad Dog Joe DeCurso from that movie. The one thing I'll mention, it's done for kids, but there's nudity in it. Did you find that weird when the manager like flips her boobs? Like it's kind of
Yeah,
funny, but
with the French poodle thing. Come here, there was, I suppose, people's heads being taken off with a drop kick as well. Isn't really for kids. There was a wrestler here from Ireland called Irish Pat Barrett. Very back in his day, he was kind of an open mid card guy, main event in some territories. Real old school wrestler, great championship amateur. Anyway, he's in the star of that movie. So in the movie where your man has the camera interviewing him in the hallway as he makes his first appearance, and they're walking out to the ring, and Mask is having his first match. The guy he's fighting there is actually Pat Barrett in that match, and he was telling me some stories about it, how he fought with the director. The director was very rude and very demanding of the wrestlers, and Pat was very a colourful character. Like, but they filmed that, I think it was a year and a half before they came out, so people think it's 85, but he said it was like, I think it was late 83, early 84 when it was actually made, like, you know. But Red Bastien, he said, recruited a lot of the wrestlers for the scenes in that movie. But I love that film. It's my favourite wrestling movie, like, you know, and the Mask
the one
character.
the one thing I was amazed about that I only found out recently is the guy that's Dick Murdoch's partner in the handicap match
Yeah,
that the Mask has is the Destroyer, Dick Beyer, without a
yeah.
mask, which you never see him without a mask. So
I
that's like a
remember
cool thing.
I watched the credits, you know, you start getting to know wrestling to see who's who, and then you get the name, you look up the name, and then you find out, yeah, who the people are. And he, back then, to see a wrestler in a movie like Roddy Piper and Day Live or King Kong Bundy used to be really excited, like people like wrestling. Because I don't know what it was like for you growing up, but when I said I was into wrestling, I used to get the piss taken out of me, like, and as if you were stupid like that, believing wrestling was real. But yeah, I used to get kind of a lot of negative comments off people. So I used to be excited to see wrestling, like, you know.
Yeah, what and it's not like this today because there's way more bullying I think back then for wrestling. But I remember when I first started liking it, everybody liked it. Then from like 92 to 96, there was a period where I'd have to get in fights because people would bully me for liking wrestling or wearing a shirt to school. Like there was a period there where it was not cool. And I was one of the few that remained a fan. So maybe that's what you mean. And then it got popular again in the Attitude Era.
Yeah. I always loved wrestling when it was on. Like I said, anyway, you can get involved, tape trading, the magazines, trying to help out shows, not invited, but you know, it was just having that passion for it and everything. And in a way, when you get into it and you go behind the closed doors and such, like, and you start treating it as a business and a livelihood and whatnot. In a way, I kind of miss that, the way, you know, the passion you had for it and excitement of it, like, you know. But now it's different. Everything changes. You can't hold on to the same things forever. Anything in life. You said a comment there earlier on with AEW, how it's choreographed and you can see they're talking to each other. That's the whole skill of wrestling, that you don't let the audience see that. With your magicians, you don't see the sleight of hand, like, and whatnot. That's what's missing, like, you know what I mean? You make people believe that they're not seeing that. Like, what's that guy? I watched one or two of his matches, Logan Paul. You think that guy was wrestling years, like, you know, how he comes out. I'm sure he fucking trains every day, months in advance of having his match, like, but why can't AEW do that with their younger guys, like, you know, just put that kind of smoothness out there, like, you know, because you're investing in your own product. So wrestling has changed. I miss the days of actual wrestling. I remember getting excited with Barry Windham with his gut wrench suplex. Buddy Landell had kind of a twisting elbow drop. Simple moves like that. I suppose technically almost a high spot back then, like, you know. But like I said, times change. Wrestling, it's not for me like it was back in the day, but fair play to the lads out there making a living.
And there's too many super kicks and stuff because at first when Chris Adams and Shawn Michaels were doing it, nobody knew the leg slapping trick, but now everybody does. So it's like, how can we get excited about a move like that anymore when it's so overdone and everybody knows the trick? You're not going to slap your leg in a real fight.
We had Tracy Smothers in here for a few tours. Character, great guy. I actually, you know, it's a pity he didn't live over here. I would have used him full time, like, you know. But I remember he got some of my guys would go stay with Tracy, and he'd bring them around the circuit over around his area of the States, Tennessee, Indiana, and all that. And what was interesting was there was so much work on. They'd be working almost every day on the indies. The lads met the likes of Bill Dundee, the Rock and Roll Express, all those kind of old school guys, like, and they would introduce themselves to the Irish guys as if the Irish guys wouldn't know who they were. And they were saying that those guys were so professional and welcoming as opposed to the younger guys on the scene who had no name. And they were like, no, no, we know who you are. And, they called them Mr. Gibson or Mr. whatever. Like, I just think that's, hearing those stories, I thought was pretty sad. Here's these guys you can be learning off, but they have to introduce themselves to people and get themselves over after all their decades in the wrestling, like, But that's just the way things are changing.
100%. And what was it you wanted to ask about Puerto Rico before we go?
Puerto Rico. So I'm not sure if you were there at the same time, but I would have had a few chats on and off with Bushwhacker Luke, I remember trying to get Madman Manson booked over there. One of my guys, and you'd ring up and you get Butch, and was it Butch or Luke? Who was the guy in the States? Or
it was Luke. It was
Luke. And he'd be on the phone, mate, and then he'd try to get himself over and trying to get booked over here. And here I am trying to get fucking guys booked over there, like. But anyway, going off topic, but there was a promoter got on to me.
That might have been after Victor died, because after Victor died, they were just scraping by.
Maybe. It's good to know. There was a Russian promoter. I don't know if he's Russian first generation or Russian American, but he had gotten on to me about wanting to bring shows over to Ireland. You want to go around Europe, you want me to be Irish guy. And he was going on about bringing out tigers and guys, models dressed up as gladiators, smoking fire, and putting all these big, extravagant shows on as a tour. And I remember saying to him, just like the venue at the time in Ireland to rent, the Old Point Depot was 25 grand in pounds at the time. Or was it euro? Anyway, 25 grand. He wanted to run there, and I was trying to say the expenses to him. And he had I'd bring all these stars in. The guy at the time, he had done some stuff in Puerto Rico. I can't think what he called it, promotion. And he was just doing press releases as opposed to shows. So he's bringing the Road Warrior animals and all this. And I rang up.
I was there for that. So
Luke had told me that this guy was basically washing money for the Russian mafia, not to trust. And nothing ever went anywhere with your man after those press conferences. Do you have any background of that?
I couldn't have been that well funded because they canceled the show. What I do remember, they did a big press conference. It was supposed to be at the arena where I think they had Elimination Chamber recently, or they've done a few pay-per-views from this arena. Jose Miguel Aguilar Arena, WWE uses it. They had like the Powers of Pain, Road Warrior Animal, Kimberly Page, pretty much all these unsigned famous wrestlers. And they did a big press conference where I think the Warlord put Animal through the table with the Barbarian. And it was done in association with IWA, because IWA was going to help fill out the undercard. And then it ended up not happening, but they spent a fortune flying all these guys out, doing the press conference. And then I remember one silly thing was they brought all of these people to the IWA show that night of the press conference to like go in the ring and talk about the show, but they never advertised it for IWA. So I was thinking to myself, they have all these stars and they didn't even like advertise on the TV show that they're all going to be appearing here. So it just was a big cluster. And as I said, they can't be that well funded because there wasn't enough of a pre-sale to actually do the show. And it was definitely the Russians. I remember Luke would drive us, so he was involved with it. So if he says it was part of something, he would know more than me.
Cheers for that. Thanks for clearing that up. I do know in wrestling there is money laundering that does go on. I've seen and heard of it in England in particular. I remember allegedly this was the story. Do you remember that group 5-Star Promotions or 5-Star Wrestling? One or the other. They were going to bring in CM Punk. Going back maybe 10 years ago, less even. Did you hear them? It was the big CM Punk was up for like £2 million.
Yeah, it was making the news. I remember.
Yeah.
That.
So apparently that was scrub money, as they call it in England, where you put in money to wash. But I remember they did a show in Northern Ireland and they'd contacted the promoter. But saying if you're willing to do, because the money was thrown around was crazy. If you want to do something down in Dublin, I could act as a regional promoter. But they wanted to keep it within the EU laws, like, you know, which made even more sense to me if they're trying to launder stuff like through their own system, tax wise or whatever wise. But they ran this like 8,000 seat arena and they got like 400 people. But when people tried to buy tickets on the day, all the cheap seats were sold out. So you could only buy the expensive tickets at the side. So it made it look like there was thousands upon thousands of people there. All those tickets were sold. So that's very dubious carry on. But yeah, money laundering in wrestling is not something new, like, you know. But yeah, I find it's stuff like that that people don't see or hear about in wrestling. There's a lot of stuff that goes on that I think makes wrestling more interesting than what it actually is, like, you know.
I actually come to remember about it. Sting, I don't think was at the press conference, but I think Sting was supposed to be on the actual show that was going to happen in Puerto Rico because he was in TNA at that time. But that was just so bizarre. I forgot all about it. But I remember the main thing I remember is Kimberly Page is in the dressing room and in a pair of those short tights. And my God bless DDP. He was lucky.
Come here.
He wasn't with her
One
at
last,
that time, but she's hot.
come here. There was plenty of women in wrestling who were attractive. I always think that's interesting. For me, I watch wrestling because it's wrestling. But you'd often wonder, like, I know on the YouTube channel I have, Suicide Fire on YouTube, you put up some of the matches from the women that have been here over the years, and you get loads of hits from India. But you wonder, like, do lads watch wrestling who are gay the way heterosexual lads watch wrestling for the women? Just speaking of gorgeous women, you'd look at them and, like, I'll watch people like a Charlotte Flair. Say you have your Becky Lynch. I'm trying to think. AEW, the shoe fight one, the Mexican wears half the face. I like good, hard hitting matches where, like in UFC, it looks like it's a fight. But you don't watch them because they're wearing a tight outfit. You watch them because you want to enjoy the match. But women's wrestling seems to get the wrong kind of attention. You see people, yeah, I don't know, man. It's a weird one, like, you know.
100%. And as far as where the fans can follow you, where can they look you up on social media?
I don't, me personally, I have social media. I came over during COVID because I work in the health sector. So it was just head wrecking listening to all these COVID talks about people who didn't know what you're talking about. But you can find me on Suicide Fighter YouTube channel. It's about suicide awareness. I'm wearing the t-shirt there, if you can see it. So it's just about bringing awareness to suicide, which something that has touched wrestling deeply. Like, there's a lot of people who commit suicide. I've seen an Irish Whip passing it out over the years, and people over various parts of England, Europe, everywhere, globally with wrestling. So there's huge awareness or suicide awareness videos, and there's a lot of old Irish Whip wrestling stuff. So Suicide Fighter YouTube channel. There's a Suicide Fighter page. There's an Irish Whip wrestling page on usual Facebook and Instagram.
So what brought you to work in that is just knowing people that have had those experiences and it's affected you and you wanted to bring awareness to it.
But you see, I work in a lot of areas where it kind of helps people, support people. So I'm sure there's people in wrestling that just think I'm a natural heel, like, you know. But look, you know yourself, you have to be a prick sometimes to put people walk all over you. In the industry full of arseholes and pussies, it's good to be a prick. But I am a nice guy and I do help a lot of good causes. And that's one that stood out to me. I know in Ireland anyway, and in Europe in particular, it doesn't get enough attention. You know, just groups out there that kind of proffer off suicide awareness, like, you know, or prevention. They sell all courses to whatever. But it's just word of mouth, you know. I'll wear this t-shirt, someone could see it, they might ask a question, I might prevent them doing whatever. You have a Jordan Peterson out there. It's to prevent people doing things that way. It's not only like addiction, even having people talking about addiction. Some people might have special needs, an intellectually disabled person in the family, not know how to support the parents of themselves, or what's out, the resources that are out there to help them. Just many ways we can help our own immediate societies, like people who are in need. It's people out there who family member might have cancer, they can't get support for that, whether it's financial, whether you need someone to look after the child. There's so much out there that we can help people with sick children. Done a lot of charity work over the years with Laura Lynn. That's a group in Ireland to look after terminally ill children. We've made a wish come true out there. We got a tour of the place, and it's very, very sad. And it makes you realise that, what some people think a problem is, there's actually families and young people out there that have much, much bigger problems. So that's what brought me all that, trying to use the somewhat of a platform where Irishwood was to bring a word out to that. All it takes, just be nice to your neighbour or whatever. Somebody was asking there earlier on about the immigrants in Ireland, giving an immigrant a smile, just try not to bring in the negativity. I won't go into the whole how my version of how the brain works, what I've read up and educated myself on, but the body does react to positive emotions and positive talks. Naturally, it'll go to the negative side, but stay away from it. One other question I wanted to ask you, and we'll get over here, and it was
one thing I'll just tell the people out there about people that might think their friends are going to do it. You should try and support them more, because they could very well do it. It can happen, and you're not going to know about it. Then you're going to feel bad about it. So if you have a friend that looks like they might do it or talks about it, but you don't necessarily believe them, there's a good chance they might actually do it, and then it's going to bother you for the rest of your life. So you should take it a little bit more seriously if you get the hints. That's just something I've noticed over the years.
Yeah, there can be a lot of cruelty around people who have hurt themselves or self-injured and that. You're not in that person's mind. It's a little bit, even an old person, you could take 10 minutes at the bleeding tail trying to pay whatever. That's their probably only social outing for that day. So a learner driver, they're learning how to drive. Just show that bit of compassion to people, people who are suffering. You can say one bad thing to them, and that'll ruin the whole day. And like you said there, set off a chain of thoughts in their head. I've stayed in contact with a few friends in Canada, wrestlers. You had a guy called Vid Vane. He was ex-Navy, an ex-prison guard, monster of a man, I had him on talking on my podcast, Irish Whip Wrestling Chronicles. It was just to talk about Irish Whip Wrestling stuff. But I think about 5 or 6 of them. I'll only do 4 or 5 more, and that's it. It's just about Irish Whip history. But he speaks in that about mental health and how his trauma from his PTSD days, and you wouldn't think it to look at him. But I mean, he's a great help to people in his region. He goes out there and helps veterans from the army. A lot of people out there, we were surprised that he was suffering at one stage, and he's gone out there and helped other people. His real name's Trevor Davis. And a pal of his, Rage, who went by Clint. He's over in Vancouver now, Clint. Trev Vid is back in Newfoundland. But Clint is 50, I think he's 54, 55. And he just decided one day, fuck this, having a few beers or whatever. I'm going to go and do a mid-50s bodybuilding competition. And he went to the 3 divisions. He won one, and I think he placed second in the other 2. But that was just determination, at that stage of life, still young, mid-50s. So anyone out there, regardless of your age or circumstances, you can always, you inside, change, you can start inside you first without commenting on anybody else. Yes, the other thing I wanted to say was you promoted some groups like TNA over the years and whatnot.
Oh yes, you worked with. You didn't work with them, but you had associations with TNA.
Yeah, but I had groups like Ring of Honor back in the day who wanted to come into the world. Harold Brody, you remember Harold Brody? He wanted to do stuff with NWA shows.
Yeah, he was on. He was with Jim Cornette's TV NWA group. If anyone doesn't remember.
And he was doing stuff with Dusty Rhodes and that, and he wanted to bring the NWA brand on the tour of Europe. There was Jeremy Borash. He wanted to bring in Hardcore Homecoming to Ireland. There was the Italians, NWA. But I was open to working with all of them once the price was right. But they want a huge chunk of money. You pay all the airfare. If it goes over a certain percentage, then they get paid back, whatever. But as a promoter, I don't think of putting a show on. Just sit down and go over the figures. What you stand to lose, what you stand to make. Don't just go out. I've just seen so many people, they bring in a big name or they work with some big company and they'll lose a fortune. And those promoters or those big name stars couldn't give a bollocks about you at the end of the day. I know Roddy Piper, we was doing a TV show over here, was mad to bring him in, but I didn't because of the finances. I knew realistically what a show would draw, and to bring him in, you'd know you're going to have a loss, even if you sold the building out. But I didn't bring him in, but I don't regret that. It's just... And I, beyond wrestling, I've seen about some comedy musician acts looking at bringing in. They'll want 85% of the gig. after you cover the basic costs. Like, stop, like, you know. But anyone looking to get in promoting, budget, learn how to budget, and learn what you can afford to lose. Now, when I say afford to lose, you lose maybe a couple of £100 in one show, but you'll make it back to the next show, say on the raffle or whatever. That kind of losing. I've seen guys who would start wrestling who have lost tens of thousands, and it's like, what? One guy in Northern Ireland lost was 50, 60 grand. Try to compete with myself. Like, I was running 10-day tours with 14 shows, nationally all over the country, 60 shows a year. But I worked my way up to that, like from losing out the very first shows I ran to show a weekend to 2 shows to 4 to 5 tours to 14-day tours. Like, you know, I know back in the day it was the same with Eric Williams. He had shows that would have lost money, but made up more than on the other shows. It's budget where you're promoting your shows. And I remember Ring of Honor, their selling point at the time was, but you'll have the after party in Dublin. We'll make it the last show of the tour. And I was like, give a fuck about after party. I want to make money, like, you know. But obviously that works for some people. Having the after party, and yeah, it's not. It's like stop, like, you know. You could just bring these guys in yourself. TNA didn't work for them. I know we worked with them, trying to get guys tryouts. You're kind of, you know, I won't say who in the office. And then one year they rang and you were like, hi, we're looking to get some illegal substances. Can you help us out? And I was just like, fucking cheeky, this guy. And I said, no, but I'll point you in the right direction where you could possibly, from what I'm told, go and get it. And he's like, no, you have to go and get it. And I said, that's not going to happen. And Morris blew me off, and I was like, cheeky fucker. So next year we went and we got the tryouts. Same guy was there, introduced myself as I did whoever else we came across. And Morris kayfabe, like I said, hello, but kayfabe. And I was just thinking, you know, if I had done that for him the year before, one, I'd let myself down, but two, if I had got caught with that amount of substance, you'd be bleeding arrested, like, you know. Not that I would have done that or would know how to do that. I'm just saying, like, you know, but don't put yourself in any kind of position that people out there in the real world or the wrestling world trying to get involved with wrestlers at a financial loss or any kind of a loss. Like, you know, think of yourself at the end of the day, think of your educations. Promoters and wrestlers alike will all try and take advantage of you for their own benefit. Now, I'm guilty of doing things like that myself back in the day. Someone said you were sick, you hurt the knee, I'll tell them, just stand in the corner, don't tag in, but make it look like you're there. I'm guilty of doing things myself, like, you know, but not at the level of where some serious crap goes on with other people. You've said yourself, some of the promoters you've worked, I can only imagine some of the stuff that went on, like, you know. But yeah, working with outside groups, big names like that, like, it's all about making a profit at the end of the day. That's what wrestling should be. It shouldn't be about putting a show on just to hang out with wrestlers, like, you know. One regret I do have is that I never took pictures. I went get into pictures with guys because I didn't want them to think it was America where you could try and work me in the hassle and try to get more money out of you. And you said, boys, the lads, don't do that either. They'll have you buying food and drink for them all night. But it's one regret I had, that I never actually took more pictures with international guys. Like Balls Mahoney is gone now, like, you know, Tracy Smothers, like, you know.
Yeah, and before camera phones, like, I don't think I took one picture when I was in Puerto Rico, for instance. I don't think I took one picture. You didn't think about it as much.
Yeah. And that's an experience. I listened to your story of that, and, you know, the thing about those stories that you're putting together, like, it's, even if you look from a wrestling point of view, just, it's storytelling. It's continuous, regardless of the content. It's something happens next. You go to the next chapter, you listen to the next one. That's what wrestling should be. That's what a good wrestling book should be, like, you know, make you want to read it. You know, you can't put it down with a continuous story. So I hope that book works out well for you.
Yes, I've been talking to a few authors about it already, and hopefully it ends with a good. This is going to be like a halfway in my career because I'm 41. I can still do stuff for the next 30 years, not necessarily just in wrestling, but in doing interviews and making other types of videos. But thank you very much for your time. Appreciate it. Nice. I think we've talked on the phone back when I was going to work for you and on the internet, but it's nice to actually talk to you, and I'll let you close this off with whatever you want to say to the fans.
Thanks very much, Devin. I appreciate it. All the fans out there, keep supporting wrestling, and look after each other. Be kind to each other.